All right. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Curriculum Committee will be up first, but looks like we have 2 public comments for the opening of the meeting. According to policy 903, public comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberation is limited to 3 minutes and should be directed to the entire school board following the announcement of your name and municipality. Under this policy, the presiding officer has the authority to warn or stop a public commenter when violation of this policy occurs. Looks like up first we have John. John.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're all good.
Never a problem.
Mine either.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm John King, Hilltown Township. Thank you for the executive summary of the Athletic and Activities Committee. The priorities are well-reasoned and the recommendations are generally excellent. I especially like the centralized activities calendar so the community can anticipate and take part in celebrating the students' achievements. I would encourage using creative ways of building early engagement activities. Many ideas, but I didn't think that was appropriate here. It's also a great idea to build student-led media crew to cover and promote the areas of activity and achievement and to help Mr. Thomas fill in the blanks, since I know he does a lot of work, but he's one man covering a big school. Where I would ask you to expand your thinking is in the priority 3 facilities. The executive summary only discusses athletic facilities, but not the facilities used by any activity or club. There is an old saying that budgets are moral documents. What we fund is what we value. By the count of participants, we average about 1,000 athletes over the 3 seasons, over 600 actors and musicians who generally cover the entire year, and probably thousands of members of the school covering the 60+ clubs. So I hope that the board will listen to the committee's findings and recommendations and ensure that all the students are supported with facilities that will support their development and safety and demonstrate the respect that they are due. I also, as I was driving over, thinking about the PAYS survey, which is an interesting addition to this meeting, and that when we give kids opportunities, they don't to turn down drugs and alcohol, they'll choose them. So, but we need to give them those opportunities and make those the choice of all the kids. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Kim Purcell.
Hi, Kim Purcell, Sellersville Borough. I've done that for 27 years, 28 if you want to include student teaching actually as well. Been there a long time and sub there often. I do appreciate the revised proposal, but one of the first things on the list was that there was some public doubt in the underlying enrollment data. And I don't know if anybody doubts the actual enrollment data, but the projections perhaps is what I think a lot of us are doubting. It's just hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. The original studies utilization discrepancy I had emailed the board about, but I never heard anybody address it. But in that original proposal, it said that South has basically 30 to 40,000 less square feet in the building than North or Central. Yet its capacity in that study was listed as higher. I don't know how you're going to cram more kids into one building with less square footage than the other building, which of course, skews its utilization number downwards. Just doesn't, I don't know, it didn't make any sense to me. It'd be nice to have that addressed. I was there here in Pennridge when we had our max enrollment years in 03, 04, and I think 04, 05. And I mean, I ran the numbers, and South's utilization number was like just a little over 50%, and we were busting at the seams. We had classes of 25 to 37 at the time. And I just don't see how all kids' needs can be met with classes that size. And I think that adding South's population to Central and to North is going to create the very similar overcrowded classroom situation. Like think art on a cart or, mobile music. Teachers bopping from room to room. Thank you. Teachers bopping from room to room more than they already do because of scheduling. But I would also like to know, in the original projection, was there any inclusion of proposed or recently approved residential development? That was not specifically addressed, at least that I saw. And another item, if we stop utilizing South as a continuously used building for school in the district, if in 10 or 12 years we do need a third middle school, can we continue to use it? Or will we no longer be grandfathered into ADA compliance, right? I think that we would be forced to build an entirely new building if we stop using it, at least as I understand it. Basically, just because you can fit kids into someplace doesn't mean you should, in my opinion.
And the other public commenter wishes to go after the committee. So in that case, we will begin our curriculum committee meeting. And we have our 2026 end of year data presentation.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, members of the school board, people who are here this evening from the community and colleagues, anyone who's watching at home. I never actually know where to look when I say that, so I sort of just look to the sky and hope that you are tuning in from home. So we're in June. It's very hard to believe. I want to just take a moment and thank you all, those of you on the school board, district administration, those of you who are here this evening. I am getting ready to come up on my 1-year anniversary as serving Pennridge School District as your Director of Teaching and Learning. And it has just been such an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to serve in Dr. Barrios's cabinet as a member of your district administration team. I'm really proud of what we have accomplished in our almost 12 months together. Just giving you some big ideas qualitatively off the top of the presentation tonight. We've put into place both short and long-term goals for Pennridge School District out of the Department of Teaching and Learning that should span us until around 2032. That looks like our curriculum review cycle, which will intentionally touch all subject areas and encore areas so that we are able to make sure that best practices at updated curriculum are brought forward to all of our Pennridge students K-12. That cycle will begin next school year under the leadership of myself and our supervisors and teams of teachers that will have the opportunity to go through each of those curricular areas. We've also established our short-term goals for our district because we recognize that while it will take several years to hit all of our content areas, we still have a responsibility to meet the needs of the students sitting in front of us this present day and as we get into next year. So we'll continue to look at standards-aligned instruction, consistent academic vocabulary, as well as intentional strategies to maximize the mastery of eligible content. And those 3 short-term goals will continue into the 26-27 school year. We also had the opportunity this year to lift our multi-tiered system of support, so that will be fully up and running K-8 next year. We've established all of our universal screeners in K-2, 3-5, and 6-8. We've had training on what those screeners will look like. Our MTSS specialists are prepared and ready to go with what progress monitoring will look like, as well as parent communication that will begin next year. We will make sure that all of our schools, especially in elementary, get the data sent home with them with parent letters. That was piloted this year in Seiler Elementary School. It was very well received, and that will go across our elementary schools next year as well. So just a few of the qualitative areas that our department has had the pleasure of looking at throughout this school year. In the high school area, we're just starting to take a look at our Pathways program, which you'll hear more about as we get into the 26-27 school year, as well as making intentional changes within our program of studies, just to make sure that it's fully aligned to the pathways that we hope to bring forward as we continue moving into next school year. A lot of qualitative information, but we want to also be able to show you the quantitative progress that we have made in math, reading, social studies, and science this year. So each of our curriculum supervisors will have the opportunity to come up to share their quantitative data, I hope, because that looks a little blank to me, but tight. Should I use it still?
Yeah.
Okay, see, I promise there is more beyond just that beautiful title screen that you had the chance to see for longer than expected. So we will move into the 25-26 math academic data, and I'll introduce Mr. Gurish for that.
Good evening. The last time we got to speak was in March, and the focus of that was on our middle school and elementary school data. We talked about beginning of year and middle of year Lincoln benchmark data in the middle schools, and we also talked about our STAR assessments in our elementary schools. Next year at that meeting, we'll also introduce, as Dr. Bloom talked about, some of our new programs that we'll be using for as far as MTSS is concerned, Acadience K2. We'll see data from that. And also in the middle school, we'll be bringing IXL data as we use that as part of our MTSS program. We recently had our students take our PSSAs. So in the fall, we will do our big presentation where we'll report on our historical data, as well as our demographic data and how our students did in all of their programs. We did have our 7th and 8th graders, as well as students at the high school, take Keystones for algebra. So this summer we'll get all of that information, and in the fall we'll be able to do that big comprehensive report where we look at the historical data. At that point we'll have our cohort data, and you'll see how our class of 2027 compared to other schools in Bucks County, other schools in our demographic comparisons. This evening, particularly, we're going to look at what we did this year, and that would be focused in the high school on our Algebra 1 Keystones that we took in the first semester. Last year, we reported that our Keystone scores did improve significantly, but we wanted to really build on that momentum. Mr. Ketty focused in on that as one of his goals, and we had meetings about developing a plan for how we're going to move forward. The first thing that we looked at was in our scheduling. In the past, we may have had 4 or 5 or 6 different teachers teaching different sections of algebra, different periods. So we really wanted to make sure that we get some more continuity, consistency in that program, be able to get teachers in those subjects common planning time, and more importantly, common assessments as well. When you have lots of teachers teaching that subject, common assessments turn into, well, tests are pretty much the same, but we really wanted to make sure that all of our students in Algebra 1 were taking those same assessments so that we could be able to see where our areas of need may be. We had 2 teachers, Miss Emily Driver and Miss Caitlin Thompson, who were very enthusiastic about that. And we were able to, with the high school's help, develop a schedule where all 10 sections of our algebra were being taught by those 2 teachers. We were also able to give them a common planning time, a common prep time, so they could work together and our coaches could get in there and work with them as well. Doing so, and I want to give a shout out to all of the math staff, because when that happens, when we focus in on a couple of teachers teaching all of these classes, we still have all of these other math classes that need to be taught now by fewer teachers, and that creates a situation where the whole math staff may have to pick up an extra prep, and that's going to be more planning time for them. So, it takes the entire math department to make this work. This year, Dr. Bloom also worked on tweaking the roles and responsibility of our instructional coaches to make sure that their roles were directly aligned with the goals of the district. So our coaches, Ms. Stacy Clemmers here, also Ms. Anita Whalen, were heavily involved from the very beginning of taking our data and turning that into action. They were able to meet with the teachers during that common planning time, look at the data, see where our needs were. They also were in the classroom helping students. They were also just having meetings with students to look at the data. And there were some really good stories about students felt like this was really the first time that a teacher sat down and just really go over, here's what your test score was, here are your areas, and felt like someone was really looking at each part of their plan. Those coaches and the teachers also developed a RAMS boot camp in the weeks leading up to the Keystone test and built in our Canvas learning management system, built courses where we connected our Keystone content with our Algebra 2 course to be able to supplement those students who are going to be retesting. So we had students who were taking Algebra 2. They put together all of the resources so they could make that connection where they're teaching certain things in Algebra 2. And this is how it's going to look on the Algebra 1 Keystone to get them ready. So with all that said, a couple of slides to take a look at. This is going to be our Algebra 1 only students. So these are students on first semester at Pennridge who took the Keystone in January. This was the second year of block scheduling, so we don't have lots of historical data here. We want to compare apples to apples the best we can. So we can look at last year was the first year ever where we had students take a semester Algebra 1 course and take the Keystone. And you can see there that our passing rate increased from 37% up to 52%. So that was quite a jump. We were very happy with those numbers. Again, this data just represents students who finished an Algebra 1 course. There were a couple of students that moved from Algebra 1A up to Algebra 1. There were also half a dozen students through the year that moved from Algebra 1 to Algebra 1A or to another math class that will have to then come back into Algebra 1.
Good. Just ask a question. So there was not a course like that in 24?
There was not a course. There was Algebra 1. That was a full year course. That was before we moved to block scheduling.
Okay.
So in the past, what you're used to seeing is all of our students, whether they were in 7th grade, 8th grade, they were in 9th grade Algebra 1, or they taking Algebra 1A, they all took that test at the end of the year. We looked at all of that data, we compiled that data in the summer, and then in the fall, we saw the big presentation where we could make all of those big comparisons. So right now, we're just focused in our students, just our 7th and 8th graders just took the test now. We don't have those results. So we're just focused in on that cohort of students that we have these as we develop the plan for them. So that is our data for just our Algebra 1 students. When we add in our Algebra 1B and our retakers, our percentages are going to drop, but they still are an increase from 33% to 39% year over year. As we compare that 39% to the previous years, now if we look at the last 4 years, we were at 21%, 22%, 29%, 33%. So over the last 4 years for all of our students.
That's helpful now.
Right.
Just to-
Because it's difficult at the end of the year when we get that data, you'll see things in the fall where it's all of our students. And it's kind of like the fruit salad of all the different cohorts that could be mixed together. So now we're just trying to put apples to apples.
Do we know what the state average is?
Well, again, that's something that we'll look at in the fall when we have all of our students take that. We will not have state averages for students who took a first semester Algebra 1 course. Okay? That's where, when we get all the data, because we don't have our 7th.
When we have our
graders,
fall
8th
presentation, we'll have state and county averages.
Okay.
They just can't do that because most schools don't take that in the winter. So that's why we're just going to take a look at the cohort that we could this year.
Thank you.
So I think one of the main points that I'm gathering from this is that we're looking at, and I want to make another point about, as we look at pass versus fail, we do want to look a little deeper, and I didn't make more and more slides about that. But if we look at the students who didn't pass the test, and we look at the students who scored below basic on the Keystone on this test, 96% of those students are students that were below basic on their last PSSA test, which is kind of what you would expect. But the thing I really liked is looking at the students who didn't pass, but were in the basic range. So we have advanced, proficient, basic, below basic. So students who didn't pass and were in that basic range. More than half of those were below basic on their PSSA. So even though we're not seeing them passing the test, we're seeing lots of growth from those students as well. So our bar graph doesn't show all of
Can you
it.
say that again?
So if we look at the students who got below basic on the Algebra 1 Keystone, 96% of them were below basic on their PSSAs coming in. Of the students who didn't pass the Keystone, but were called basic, it's still not passing, but it's basic. Of those students, more than half of them are coming up from the below basic on the PSSAs. So even though there's a large group of students who didn't pass the test, they showed growth.
Right, we're looking at almost 1 in 5 students is below basic.
And again, now we're looking at retakers. So these are students who had already not passed the test.
Right.
And we want to give them every opportunity to pass that, so they're going to take it again. And again, all right, students that are in Algebra 1A and Algebra 1B. So these are students who didn't take algebra in 7th grade, didn't take algebra in 8th grade, took Algebra 1A in 9th grade and Algebra 1B, possibly 10th grade. So we're not including 7th graders here, that 95% of them pass the test every year. We're not including 8th graders, who a high percentage of them pass the test. So these are the students who didn't pass the test yet.
About how many students is that? I mean, yes, how many are retaking it?
It depends on the time of year. Sorry. I think in January we had under 100, but in May we had
Okay.
probably 130, 140.
What do they do when if they don't pass it?
So if a student is in Algebra 1 and they don't pass that test, it depends on the retesting is if they're in Algebra 2. So all our students that are in Algebra 2, or we'll even have students that are in pre-calculus, they will then retake the test. So in Algebra, when they're in Algebra 2, Stacy was talking about, they get together, they meet with those teachers, they develop activities. I think you went through and built a whole bunch of warm-up activities to try to remediate them, because when they're in the Algebra 2, they're kind of reviewing some of those Algebra 1 concepts. We feel like they would have an opportunity. If a student, though, moves on and does not go on Algebra 2, they do not retest.
Don't they need that as part of graduation, or there's other ways around it?
There are other ways around that.
And they
And that's
usually
where
will
the data
handle-
gets very confusing too. Now that we've moved to block scheduling, some other little things start creeping in. Students can meet their graduation requirement by hitting the composite score. Correct me if I mess any of this up.
Yeah,
Where they look
okay.
at their 3 scores. And now we have situations where we have students taking biology, and also they take lit in their 10th grade year. And if they take it in the first semester and do well enough, then they look at it and say, well, now between my lit and my biology, I met the requirement. And now we want them to take and sit for the Algebra 2, and some of them are not real excited about sitting for this Algebra 2 test because they've already checked off that they know they met it. And we can't really pull them out and to tell you which kids those are and took it seriously.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I'll pass it over to Ms. Burke.
So, good evening, everyone. This is my 10th month anniversary of being in a Pennridge, proudly serving, and I wanted to thank everybody both in the audience, at home watching, and the board, and all of the teachers and dedicated hard work of our teachers and our students, which you will see in this data that I'm presenting tonight. As Mr. Gersh pointed out, this data that we have currently is for K2 only, and we'll have that additional data for you in the fall for our benchmark in our middle schools, and then 3-5 as well, and our PSSAs for grades 3-8, as well as our Keystones composite scores from this spring. So this is our 2025-2026 DIBELS kindergarten data. And as you can see from this data, we have decreased our students in need of intensive and strategic support from 68% to 31%, which is a 37% decrease in 1 year's time. And in our core and core support plus, we increased 38% from 32% to 70%. And this growth in students is incredible, and it speaks to our strengthening of our programs, the support of our reading specialists, some of whom are in the audience tonight, who are really using data to drive instructional decisions that they're making for students to help them learn to read on or above grade level. And so this is something that I find really exciting to look at. Historically in kindergarten last year, the number of students needing intensive and strategic support also decreased 37%. So we're almost right on the margin. And we also saw this increase last year for students at Core and Core Support Plus, just around 42%. So we're continuing to see that strengthening of our programs and consistencies across our schools.
Would you mind just taking a moment and explaining each of the 4 different categories of support?
Absolutely. So intensive support is for students who are reading significantly below grade level, and they need targeted support in order to help them gain those skills necessary in order to grow. And that's targeted. That is getting support, one-on-one support, depending on the need. And that's where our reading specialists really come into play to give students what they need in real time. And then we have strategic support, and that is for students who are close to reading at grade level, but still need that additional support happening most in small group instruction within the classroom. And then core support are students reading at grade level, and core support plus is at or above. And those are really enriching those opportunities for students to interact with language.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So referring to last year's data, what percentage were in core support and core support
I
plus?
have that. So for in kindergarten, historically, the kindergarten students who were intensive and strategic were just around 42% last year, a
Now it's
decrease.
31. It's helpful to show that kind of data. I've said this many, many times, but to see where we've been in the past.
Absolutely.
This year is great. I mean, that data is nothing. You know, it seems like it's better than last year. So you turn more people into the core than we did last year.
Absolutely.
That's worth showing too.
Yep. Thank you so
I
much.
don't know where it
for that.
was 3 years ago too. I'd like
Right.
to see those kind of trends.
And I have that as well here too. But you're correct to continue to show that growth. And Linkit puts together really powerful charts to do that too, which you'll see at the end of my Dibbles data.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. No, it's great.
Didn't-
Thank you
didn't
so
see
much.
that.
I appreciate it. When we look at first grade, again, continuing, we look at our intensive and strategic support for students. Again, that decreased by 28% from 50% to 22%. And our core support plus increased from 28% from 50 to 78, which again, we're continuing to see that growth. Historically, if we look back at what students at this time were doing in first grade last year, the number of students needing intensive and strategic decreased again, and it decreased 22%. So we saw more of a decrease this year at this time than we did last year by 6%. And then for students at core and core support plus, last year at this time, we saw them at 22% from 53 to 75. And this year, again, we're at 28%. Second grade, if we take a look at this data, this is the number of students. Again, we're going to look at intensive and strategic support, and this decreased 4% this year from 39 to 33. And then our core and core support plus increased 6% from 61 to 67. Now, if we look at the second grade data, historically last year, the number of second grade students last year needing this intensive and strategic support decreased by 7%, and the core support plus also increased by 7%. And I attribute second grade growth to be slower. And this is a result of transitioning, and I've said this many times, from learning to read to reading to learn. And in grade 2, it served as a major instructional bridge. This is when students start to apply foundational reading skills to reading comprehension that is measured in second grade as part of the Dibbles assessment. And this is really when students begin to make meaning and they increase their complex texts, require stronger vocabulary, language comprehension, and stamina. These results overall continue to reinforce the importance of continuing to strengthen Tier 1 literacy instruction with putting in support similar to what we're putting in next year with MTSS and our structured literacy practices to accelerate growth for all students. Looking ahead, our goal is to continue to strengthen Tier 1 instruction, explicit instructional routines, data-driven decision-making, and consistency across classrooms by continuing to use our universal screeners and progress monitoring systems. And as Mr. Gersh pointed out, that would be Acadience for next year, the continuation of STAR and Renaissance and IXL to provide support for students as part of our MTSS systems of support. None of this work and growth could be possible without the effort and dedication of our teachers and, again, our reading specialists in our community for continuing to support early literacy skills. And a big shout out to Stacy Clemmer for constantly pulling this data and analyzing it and looking at it in 5 different ways. And I'm just really proud of this team. So thank you.
I did have a question.
Sure.
Kindergarten, are you able to see the difference in their scores for a half day and a full day?
That's really interesting. I would love to disaggregate that data. Right now, we're looking at it holistically for all. But again, in the fall, when we get those navigator reports from Linkit and we look at historical data, to really disaggregate that by subgroup would be really fascinating to start to look at. And I can do that as well.
Yeah, when we pull it out by teacher, we'll be able to look at that. And Ms. Burke, could you just mention about have the kids who are in 2nd grade, did they have the foundations all the
Yep,
way through?
They did, absolutely, which is phenomenal. They absolutely did.
This is great data. It really is. Just showing the consistency of what you guys have put into place. It's wonderful. It's really specialist. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your support. Kudos to all of them for their continued efforts. They're in the audience over there with shout outs and dance moves, and they should be. Yeah, I just saw a dance move.
That's so important, though.
Really good. Yeah. Teaching kids to read. It's amazing. Thank you.
I just want to add to, I know a couple of years ago, I spoke with Stacey and she explained her job, and it's very fascinating how she digs into the data to identify, I keep on saying patients because that's my job, it's subjects, not subjects, yeah, students. That's my, identify students, and really target in on what will help them, and you see results almost immediately. It's incredible.
Thank you so much.
Working with the individual, you see it in the class at their table.
Yes.
You see the difference from a couple years ago to now and how it has really moved forward. So,
Thank you. This is one of our reports that we actually pulled from Linkit, which I find fascinating. And it's our school summary. So it's an overall breakdown of students from the beginning of year to end of year by building. And so when we look at this, you will see the growth straight down increase. And so if we take that average of all the schools from all of our students in K2 who took the DIBELS assessment in the beginning of the year and the end of the year, the Pennridge School District started at, the beginning of year, 49% students at core support and core support plus. And we ended the year with 73% of our students reading at or above grade level, which is an average of 24%. And that is just remarkable when we look at the whole picture of our district and the work being done in our buildings. And I attribute this to the explicit instructional routines and our short-term goals that we put in place to strengthen systems. So now we can strengthen programs. And that's what we're starting to see in the data. And it's the work of a team. And so I want to applaud our building principals too, who are leading the charge in their buildings. Our instructional coaches, Dana Lupinacci has been instrumental in the elementary schools with literacy. Anita Whalen again jumping in to really build that support as well. Stacy pulling the data, and Dr. Bloom supporting those short-term goals and the efficacy of our instructional practices. So thank you everyone for that.
I have a question.
Sure.
So this is from Linkit, right?
Yep.
So would we be able to then to look at these percentages, and then it's great, what has been done in the past?
Absolutely. Yep, that's the historical data. And they do it over 5 years, which is really great. And you can pull it over 5 years' time and just see it so outlined like this, which is instrumental. And again, Stacy is the guru behind the scenes, really helping us pull that in real time.
The navigators will come out in the fall.
In the fall.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I had another question, and I know it's not part of this presentation, but for the students who need the more intensive support, strategic support, what do we have in place to kind of keep momentum through the summer so that we're not losing a lot.
I love that so much that you asked that. Again, we always want books in kids' hands. Always. The more books we can put in kids' hands to read, encouraging summer reading, getting to our libraries. We just sent communication out to our librarians and our elementary schools about keeping that love of reading active and alive within our communities. That is one of the number one goals that we really want to see more of out there as well. I know some teachers sometimes send home, and this is per building, so I don't want to speak for all, but I know the reading specialists have done a really great job in putting together resource packs to send home to make sure that learning continues. So I'm really proud of that work as well. Absolutely. Taking a look at literature keystone data, this is similar to what Mr. Gersh pointed out. And again, this is really the apples to apples because we don't have that spring keystone data in yet. That will happen in the fall. And so we're looking at literature keystone semester 1 only, and we're actually looking at our students, and this is just our 10th graders. So our retesters aren't in this first graph from last year, 2025, to the winter of this year, 2026. And there was a 7% increase in proficient and advanced for 10th grade first-time Keystone test takers from 66% to 73. And then there was a 7% decrease in basic from 30% to 23. This work is really a result of that strategic support we put in place with our high school teachers, especially in 9th and 10th grade, really using that benchmark linkage data to align it to what the Keystone data was and identify skill gaps. And then take those kinds of questions and skills and apply them to their instruction in the classroom. They also leverage some of the skill diagnostics that we can use with IXL and small bursts to really redefine and really explicitly help students have exposure to the rigor and expectation of the Keystone exam. And this work really started in October. And so when we look at this impact, it's really incredible of the explicit instructional routines, the mastery of eligible content, and the consistency and vertical alignment and articulation of our curriculum in grades 9 and 10, and even aligning it in 8, 9, and 10, so those kids are ready to take this assessment. This includes the retakers, and again, Mr. Gersh pointed this out in a similar fashion, and this data represents the first-time test takers and the 11th grade retakers. So we see a 4% increase in proficient and advanced from 57% to 61%, and then we see a 3% decrease in below and below basic students from 43% to 40%. One of the things we started to look at is who these students are in our 11th grade English classes and how do we offer support and data-driven using the data from our benchmarks and from these Keystone data reports from Linkit to strategically support our students who need it, especially in 11th grade when they become retakers. And really looking at that within the classroom block and offering that small group instruction to these students to really help strengthen their growth the second time they take it on the Keystone. We started the work this year, and I'm really looking forward to continuing it next year and using this data when it comes in, and we start to disaggregate it in the fall to identify the students who need that support in 11th grade.
Is there anything about this that's similar to MAP where the block like has an impact?
It is. It's similar to that. We see that often when students take it first semester and second, the winter and the spring. And that's why when we present data in the fall, we're going to have that 5-year data all in one place to really look at and disaggregate. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support. Thank you, Dr. Bloom and our administrative team. For all of the support you put into place, and especially our teachers. I know some are in the audience now and those viewing from home, and our reading specialists. Thank you so much, everyone. Next is science.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to present our end of year data. Today we will be looking primarily at our grades 6 and 7, beginning of year to end of year benchmark, as well as our winter Keystone for biology, which was the final legacy Keystone. We'll have that information. So first up, looking at our beginning of year, end of year progress for students in grade 6, we saw an increase of 34% in our proficient and advanced ratings, which we were very excited to see. Again, we're in year 2 of implementation with our Twig Science resources. We definitely see an increase in confidence in the classroom, students getting used to some of these explicit instructional frameworks, that we're using, including claims evidence reasoning. We feel like this is really supporting how students are tackling questions that have analytical and critical thinking components to them. And so definitely credit to our teachers to support students as they move through this curriculum. One thing I do want to note is that we are utilizing the Linkit benchmarks, which is unique in science because our STEEL standards are grade banded. So they are essentially standards from 6th through 8th grade. And we've been working with our partners at Linkit to kind of dissect and understand the assessment in terms of the questions and the standards that they're presenting. That is different than the curriculum that we're presenting through Twig Science. So I just want to make a note of that. So we have an intention to work with Linkit to develop curriculum-specific assessments that are beginning, middle, and end of year. But currently what we're utilizing is the Linkit integrated science. So you may not see proficiency shifting upward until we have that curriculum alignment. So I just wanted to call that out.
So the measurements here are linked tests
Developed by Linkit.
Lincoln.
Yes. So
You're using, okay.
So we're utilizing their integrated science benchmarks, which includes all of the standards that we are being assessed on in terms of the Pennsylvania STEEL standards. What is not specific is, unlike math or RELA, where you see grade 6 standards, grade 7 standards, grade 8 standards. In science, our standards are grade banded 6 through 8.
So there could be testing on something they're learning.
So
in 8th grade?
the sampling of the assessments that we do notice is not an exact in terms of the information that they're being instructed. However, with the integration of science curriculum, we tend to cycle through life science, physical science, earth science topics, beginning in elementary and increasing in complexity as they move and shift towards the bio keystone in high school and our advanced courses. So they have familiarity based on their previous instruction, and what we're going to see in our grade 7th grade, if I shift. Yes, please.
Mr. Wers, that goes along with Dr. Barrios's call for common assessments and alignment through each of the grades. So this year, as we work to build the systems around that and make sure that we have the systems of support there with MTSS and all of our curriculum renewal cycles, next year, especially in the middle school area, we'll work to then not necessarily move away from the Linkit benchmark, but to create common assessments that reflect both the Linkit benchmark standards and our curriculum. And then they will be housed in Linkit, and we'll use them in that way. And that's the alignment that he's pushed for, at least since I've been here so far.
Thank you. Again, we saw an increase in proficiency with our grade 7 students who are taking the Linkit benchmark. And that increase was 17% from 21% to 38%. Advanced and proficient. So in speaking with the teachers, they are definitely noticing that students are progressing through the content with more confidence. Real shout out to all of our teachers, grades 6 through 8, who have throughout the year just shown that continual push for students to have critical thinking, analytical thinking, and those claims, evidence, reasoning responses. From what we are gathering about the shift in terms of science assessments, students are really going to need to utilize what we've spoken about in the past, those graphs, charts, tables, those analytical questions. And so that is the work that's being done in the classrooms, and there's definitely a direct translation to what we're going to see. Our 5th and 8th grade students took the first Steels Aligned PSSA assessment in this spring. And that data is going to be a little bit delayed compared to our math and RELA counterparts. We were notified that we will not necessarily get that information until at least the fall. And then for our keystones, that might be delayed until about December. So we will continue to present all of this information and this data as well as the historical, although we won't have comparative data because this was the first rendition of that assessment. But some more news to share about our bio keystone. So this winter assessment in 2026 was the last legacy assessment, and we still saw growth with our students, which we're very excited about. We saw an increase from what was our previous year, where students were showing proficient and advanced ratings at 58%. Our most recent and our final legacy keystone shifted to 63%. So we did see that increase, and that has kind of been a trend. In the fall, we will be able to present some of how this compares to some of our cohorts. And that information we had shifted from 2 years ago around 58%. Last year, the cohort was about 64% that was reported, and we're trending in that direction. So happy to present that data to you. Are there any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jenna Vitale, the Social Studies Supervisor, and I'm here to present the 8th grade civics exam data. Historically, our students have performed excellently on the civics exam, and this year is no exception. Here are the results of the exam. So we're looking at 100% passing in 2 of our schools and very, very close to 100% passing in our 3rd school. This data includes all of our 8th graders, our multi-language learners, and also our students with IEPs as well. It's a testament to our civics and government curriculum. So.
Well done.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the Department of Teaching and Learning's end-of-year data results. As promised from the beginning, we will continue to bring you both the qualitative and quantitative story of the district. As we said throughout this presentation, this is what we can provide now. When we do get all of our full results, you will get that 5-year historical comparison come fall, and we will present that most likely in October or November once we have the scores, once we're able to disaggregate the data, then we can begin those peer comparisons and those cohort disaggregation so that you have more specific data as we move forward. We'll then be back to you again next year in mid-year to give you a mid-year update, and then again at the end of the year. Are there any final questions or comments for me or our team?
I have a comment.
Of course.
Not as a board member, but as a parent.
Sure.
The other night, so going into this year, my daughter's in 1st grade at Bedminster, and she was extremely insecure because she wasn't reading as well as some of her friends from kindergarten, which frankly, they were all reading books. So not all, they were already reading books. So they were advanced, but she still felt really far behind. And the other night, my wife and I were going for a walk, and we tried to spell ice cream to each other, and my daughter chimed in and said, "Are we going for ice cream?"
I love this story.
So I want to say thank you to you, and also I will take $4.95 at your earliest convenience.
That is exactly what we're hoping for. And, you know, you nailed it when you said this is a team effort, right? It starts with, the goals and the desires of the school district of Pennridge, down to the cabinet, Dr. Barrios, to myself, to our fantastic supervisors, the coaches, the teachers, the principals. It is a team effort, and I'm thrilled to pay you that $4.95 for that ICECREAM. So, are there any other questions or comments this evening?
Yeah, I just hope that looking at this data, and there's definitely excellent data here, right? But I also think that looking through several of these slides, our below basic numbers have, in some areas, increased.
Sure.
And I know I keep harping on mathematics, but I think we see that across the board in some of the other areas, and that we're not losing sight of these 1 in 5 students at the high school that are not doing so hot in mathematics.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our continued push with our short-term goals. And whether it's high school or whether it's elementary school, having a solid tier 1 instructional program in place that would allow access to, the majority of our learners is step 1. Making sure you have that consistent academic language and intentional instructional strategies to, make sure that we're serving the gaps that students may show will hopefully help to close that 1 in 5 gap. But if it doesn't, then what what questions do we need to ask next? What is the student showing in the classroom? What is the teacher recommendation? What are they looking at? What other types of interventions do they need? And are they responding to those interventions? And those questions can be challenging both for teachers, parents, students as they get older, because they're more aware of if they're not feeling as successful as their same age peers. So I think that continuing to look at those questions and staying focused on those short-term goals will allow us to make sure that we're not just serving the middle, but that we're serving all ends of the bell curve.
And I know that our staff is doing that, and they are flexible. and they do
100%.
come up with solutions on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gratefully appreciative of that.
Absolutely.
As a board member and as a parent. So, done.
Thank you.
Would like
Off my soapbox.
Of course.
If I may add, though, with and Mr. Gurish references in his presentation, Act 158,
Yes.
which was passed in 2018 and provides different pathways to graduation. So he mentioned a composite score. So if a kid lacks proficiency, it's sometimes very difficult. Even though they didn't pass this Keystone algebra, they're still succeeding and excelling in other spaces. So we're leveraging our energy to try to get a child to take this exam. They can still graduate without the passing these Keystone tests.
It's a very hard exam, just to put that out there. If anyone takes a look at the questions, it's a challenge.
An area I think we could take a look at is when you look at 8th grade algebra proficiency scores and you break it down into quartiles, kids who typically score in the lower quartile, you can get great predictive data on how children will do based on their 8th grade PSSA algebra scores and predictive measures. So even if they get, which is difficult to get a proficient score in 8th grade algebra, but if they're in the lower quartile, the predictability of them getting, it's not guaranteed that they're going to get proficient on the Keystone algebra. We see a drop there. So one thing that hamstrings us, though, is Act 158. It's wonderful to provide different pathways of graduation, but when you're talking about drilling down to getting these kids across the finish line with proficiency, it's just one of the challenges we face. Not an excuse, but our reality.
All right. Oh, sorry. Did anyone else have any comment? Yeah, that was, you said it much more eloquently than I did. So I
I may
appreciate that.
add one other thing.
Of course.
I know we have some of our reading specialists and teachers in the room, and you've heard, our board has heard this, but it's very rewarding for me to sit here and see, and selfishly speaking, see all the work of working as a team, rowing in the same direction, common assessments. It's one thing to speak about it, but starting to see some of the fruits of the labor come together. And we still have a lot of work ahead of us, but it's just been fantastic. I commend all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Obsolete books listed. Does anyone have any questions about that need to be addressed? All right, sounds good. In that case, our next curriculum committee meeting is scheduled for August 19th.
Right along.
For after student service.
Kills me. I vote no on that one.
Dave,
Your story, but I think like, were you guys trying to figure out how to spell ice cream?
Yeah, right.
And then I realized. Blank screening. Yes, sir.
Great, wonderful. Thank you. Welcome back. We're going to actually move to student services first. As we see teachers in the audience, so we figured we'd do student services first and then on to policy. Is that okay with the board? Perfect. All right, so moving right ahead, we don't have any public comment. We do, so first will be our middle school consolidation with Dr. Palmer will be presenting.
It's the next slide. Blank screen thing. Just thinking. No, mine works. Once I click in, it's heavily consolidated. Pulling it right from board docs. So.
That's okay. I hate. Our tech support is.
Do not hide.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. So this evening, I'm bringing to you a middle school consolidation recommendation. So this evening, we're going to be talking about some of the feedback that we've received from families, from staff, board members. We're going to talk some about the themes that were raised. I'd like to present a revised implementation timeline. I'd like to look at the working group structure earlier. Again, we're going to be asking the board for direction. So first of all, we did receive quite a bit of feedback from community members. We've had a lot of emails, phone calls. The cabinet, the direction of Dr. Berrios, went over to meet with South Middle School faculty at the faculty meeting. We responded to questions. Teachers of South Middle School greatly appreciate them reaching out to us. We've also responded to questions from board members. One of the things that we will be doing is putting together a document of frequently asked questions. I think there's there's 40 or 50 different questions that we've responded to from teachers, community members, and board as well. Some of the things that we've heard were concerns about the underlying enrollment data and those projections. Questions about our staff plans and the class sizes that we currently have. Concerns about really the culture and identity of South Middle School and what it means to the community. Questions about extracurricular opportunities that we'd have, chances for kids to participate in clubs and activities. A strong desire for public engagement, giving people the opportunity to share their concerns and ask questions. And questions about the feasibility of the timeline. We'd be able to have the time to really get all of those things done, answer those questions. So I'm going to address a few of those directly, and a few of those we'll kind of talk about how we're going to manage things moving forward. So there were questions specifically about the projections and concerns about what if we're inaccurate? Are we taking some things into consideration? One of the things I would direct community members to, and again, I shared this with the board, looking back at the June 10th, 2025 Facilities Committee meeting. During that meeting, we had Breslin architect firm come in and provide their presentation for you. They also provided their detailed report that included the Pell study. And just a few points in that I'd like to direct you to. One of the things that they looked at, there were concerns about what about the construction that's been coming into Pennridge. Have we looked at these? So if you go into that study on pages 5 and 6, you'll see some detailed information where Pell went in and looked at the Bucks County Planning Commission development map, looked at all the proposed subdivisions and construction. They also reached out and contacted each one of the townships to look at what other things had been approved in each one of the townships. So I think they had identified 974 units that had been developed between 2017 and 2025, and they included that as part of the study. So including things that were projected as well, like buildings in Silverdale and the construction in East Rock Hill Township up on Old Bethlehem Pike. So those questions about those were included as part of the study. I think one of the other concerns was looking at the data. What about errors in terms of what our predictions are? This is something that we asked Pell specifically because there were concerns when the previous study had been shared about the accuracy of those projections. So if you look at the end of that study on page 48, it's somewhere near the end, you're going to see some information about their mean absolute percent error. So other than their study that was conducted during 2012-13, which you can see overestimated our enrollments, each one of the other ones had very, very small percent errors as part of their prediction. So if you're interested in reading about the models and how they do these predictions, these are really related to birth rates, people moving in and out, retention rates of students as they go from one grade level to the next. And again, you'll see that their accuracy during the first 5 years we had discussed is actually should obviously be much closer than that during the second 5 years. So if you look in there, the 2016-17 study had that error of about 0.5%, and in all years it was only about 1.9%. So I think one of the things that we will be coming forward with an ask would be that we do look into doing another study in the coming years. So typically this is done, here it's been done every 4 to 5 years. I think probably with this coming up, we would be asking to start that study in another 4 years. So that's, you'll see that's one of the asks that we're going to do.
So, I mean, I'm assuming that some of the concern is, like if the 2012, 2013 was so off, how can we make sure that the latest one isn't the same thing, just in the opposite direction? And I feel like when you talk about the 5-year data, the 2012 and the 2013 ones started getting pretty far off within those 5 years. Like that.
Yeah, I think
is
that
a quick way to determine that it was not headed in the right direction. But do we know like what happened in that study? Like, was there something they were considering or didn't consider that threw it off so much?
That's a great question. Pell at the time we had them in wasn't able to answer that. We can go back into them. I think it had to do with the team that they had working on at that time. We'd actually had another someone who wasn't Pell did it as well as part of Breslin. That was a little less accurate. I think Pell's pretty much the gold standard is what people use for doing these kinds of studies for enrollment. I think one of the recommendations you'll see is that we do continue to monitor enrollment year by year. And if we see changes that are significant, I think that gives us a pause and we may have to look and say, okay, what can we do? For the first 5 years, generally, it's fairly accurate because kids are really already in your pipeline, particularly for secondary. Elementary really is the question, and I would imagine that those changes right there really represent elementary changes. They didn't anticipate the drop-off that was occurring starting in that 2013 year.
But it does give us a little more confidence in the most recent one because it didn't veer so much off course in the first 5 years. Like,
No,
it does seem
very, very close.
following.
Can you add the new study in here? Because that projects out a lot farther, right?
We can add it.
Just to see, I mean, we should be predicting, it should be, if this is going out to the public, they should see where we are projecting in the future too.
Yes, we do have that on the other slide that
Yeah, but
shows the projections out, just
Yeah, but I
not in
think-
this style of bar graph.
But in this presentation, do you have it? Or?
In our previous presentation,
Yeah, I know it was in the previous one, but it'd be nice to consolidate that and say.
into one graph.
Because if they look at this one, they don't see any future, just this presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I know you had it on the other one. It's more helpful to see that prediction continues to go down as opposed to no data here.
Well, and also I think well, we've already passed the first 5 years for the 2016, 2017, but like, back to the point, I think if it is a very inaccurate projection, you'll see it varying off course.
Yes.
Pretty drastic.
Any other questions about that part? One of the other questions we got was about class sizes, concerns that some classes already at maximum capacity. So one of the things we've done is to analyze what our class sizes have looked like. The data seen here is middle school class sizes for each of the middle schools during this current school year. One of the things you can note is that very bottom row, grand total on the right shows that each of the middle schools have class sizes right about 20, 19, 20, and 18 for a total average of 19. If you were to look at this over the last 3 years, the grand total of all since 24, 25, and 26 at all three middle schools, 19 was the class sizes. And you'll see here that none of the class sizes on average really go above 23 in this current year. But there are some individual ones that pop up, like there's a music in grade 6 at Central, which is at 31. Accelerated English, there's a couple of sections of those. And it really happens that there's only 2 sections of that, which is where you wind up with that.
So now this, I'm guessing, is kind of when we're talking about like capacity versus square footage versus number of students.
Well, I think this speaks to one of the things that we looked at was savings in closing South Middle School had a lot to do with reductions of staff. So those reductions, if we were to realize those through attrition, would we have the capacity to really teach those kids? And we certainly do. We wouldn't want our class sizes to rise above 24, 25 kids in a class. I think that's something that people have spoken very strongly about. I think that's something we as a district need to look, we don't want to have class size. So this gives us a good sense that you could realize those staffing reductions while still maintaining very good class size.
So if we look at like the music program at Central, which is already pretty high,
Mhm.
and if we're saying like, hey, some like South students are going to come there, how does that realize it? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean we need another classroom. We just need to offer that class more often throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like, how does it?
I think that's one of the
translate?
things that is challenging to understand. When you look at capacity, we certainly don't want to take our schools and pack as many kids in
Right.
there as we can. But if you have, a teacher, every teacher has their own room. The teacher has a lunch and prep period, their duty period. That room's going to be unutilized for a certain amount of time. So a lot of schools do have teachers who do float. Each person doesn't have their own classroom. That's the only way to realize a percent utilization approaching that 75 or 80% capacity utilization of the capacity of that building. So those are things that you have to look at in terms of the scheduling of what we would be doing at each one of those schools.
And so there's the building size, and if you get to this later, I'll happily wait too. But what would be something where we would say, like, we need another classroom? Like, what would be an example for that? And I don't mean build another classroom, but like, we're at a subject now where we don't even have enough classrooms to cover the subject. Like, what would be an example of that happening in a middle school?
I mean, is there an example of that
So,
occurring?
What would mean? Let me try and think of a different way to ask it, because I'm asking because I'm confused myself, so that's probably why my question is confusing. Again, if we go back to the music situation, where we would talk about that, there's one teacher in a classroom and they're not always in there, so maybe another music teacher come in there and teach. what would be an example of when even that wouldn't be enough? You know, there's so many kids that we can't even, we need to, maybe math or something is like a better example for it because it's not an elective, but what would be an example where we're saying, even with the teachers we have and the classrooms we have, we still need another classroom?
Right. I mean, you could be at a point where you had so many students that you didn't have enough spaces to go. I
Right.
think one of the things with scheduling is you have to be able to use your building each one of those periods throughout the day.
Mhm.
So you can't jam all of your sections into first or second or third period just because you don't have the space for all of those things to happen. You know, during lunches, you're going to see during those periods, typically your utilization's down because there's, you know, all the kids are going to be at lunch or they're there. So you're not going to have it during that time. Whereas during first and last period, you usually wind up with your greatest utilization because those are almost always periods that are going to be filled to capacity. I don't see us being in that situation. I would never want us to be in a situation where we didn't have enough rooms to
Right.
have all of the classes being taught. But there are very special cases. So I think things like STEM, we have to look very closely at. Music, art. How are we using those spaces? And you certainly don't want to be in a situation where you're trying to teach STEM in a regular classroom or art in a regular classroom. I think that's why looking very closely at how we're utilizing those rooms is going to help us.
So if you, so if you took all these students, did you have these numbers? You just shifted those from south to north, and what would be the average class size today? Since you have all the students here, the average size. Can you get us a number on that?
I can go through you with the projections of where we would be based on that. Yeah.
Like to see. That would be as of today, just if you. That would give us a shot at what we're looking at. That's without trying to improve your utilization of classrooms, right? Because you can use those, I think those ideas are good, but this would be just where we're starting.
Yeah, we can certainly share that with you.
Do we think block scheduling will make this more difficult or easier or not have an effect?
It's all of the above. Yes. Block scheduling, you can do just about anything. There were districts back in the day that, you know, they specifically went to block scheduling to try and reduce staff and cut people out. I don't think that's the way to utilize block scheduling. You need to use block scheduling to really try to improve construction. There's a lot of things you can do. And the team that was looking at this looks very closely at what block would look like for middle school. I think we need to look at that programmatically. What's important to us is high quality instruction, having enough instructional minutes for math and ELA, and having enough space. I think one of the things that came up in those committees was like music. We're doing music outside of our regular school day. We're doing it during 11th period. I don't think those are things that we want to continue to do, which is what really drove this. Could it help? It could. Could it make it more challenging? Definitely. It's definitely going to change our staffing model. So whatever we do in terms of the schedule, we need to look very closely at that, which is why there's a lot of work to be done.
I have a quick question regarding the music. Is that like a music class, or is that like incorporated with the band? Like maybe that particular school has band and that's their music.
That's music class.
It's like music theory.
I think, did I leave? I think I took course out of this one because one of the courses had like 39 kids in it or something like that. It was crazy. Which there are some of them that didn't make sense. And then like, if you look at analysis of fiction and nonfiction for 8th grade, those are really small section sizes, and they're small for a reason. Those are kids that are getting support across there. So, you know, there's a lot of detail into this. You can't just say class size because it really matters what's happening in the classroom.
That's why I was asking if there was a breakout for why were they in music class, if it was dedicated to like this was the jazz band or the concert band.
And one of the
they all
things
had to meet at the same time.
One
That's
of
why the number's that big.
One of the challenges, like, is having 3 schools is we do have some teachers that are going from school to school to school. We've got people that go from south to north to center. They're split. and they teach a section at this school, sections at that school, section. It's not the most efficient use of people. I don't think it's good for people. Certainly not good for the kids and not utilization of space or staff. Those are things we'd like to avoid.
Thank you.
I'm still a little stuck on the block scheduling though.
Yes.
Because I would imagine if, if we're putting more students in each of the buildings, in my head, if you have more subjects, more students, then you would, if there's more opportunities for them to be in a class throughout the day, that would help us be able to utilize the space a little bit better, as opposed to less opportunities to be in a classroom a day. So if we had, I don't know how long it is a period in middle school right now.
Yeah.
Short though, but okay. But if you have all those 42-minute ones, and then you can move kids through faster and use the same room more often.
It doesn't make it any.
It doesn't
I
make
can
any,
assure you.
okay.
It doesn't help either way. It's neither of these is gonna, no schedule's gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna fix your capacity issues, certainly. You're still gonna have those same spaces and you'll have different sets of challenges. I think when we look at the schedule, we look at a schedule that is going to be best for kids, for teachers, for our instructional program we're developing, and improving our kids academically. So we can work on the staffing and the utilization on any schedule that we develop. So changes. Let's talk about things we want to make differently. I think we want to expand opportunities for community engagement and public hearings. People want to have a voice and be able to share how they feel. Some additional detailed operational planning prior to implementation. I think we were looking at a very tight schedule for planning. Transparent staffing and transition processes, being very clear about how we're going to go about making these changes. Consolidation is going to be a real challenge. Continued review of class sizes and scheduling models. I think that's something we have to continue to monitor throughout the entire process and make those projections. Protection of student opportunities and support. I think there was a lot of concern I heard from people about what about our special ed kids? What about opportunities for them to engage in after school activities and sports and clubs? I think those are things that we are going to continue to focus on to have those opportunities. Development of little expanded formal working groups for our implementation, and certainly a revised timeline focused on implementation fidelity. What's not changed? So our outlook on long-term enrollment utilization needs, we are very confident that we are making our best judgment on this. We still believe we have significant excess middle school capacity. The future operational capital challenges have not gone away. We still have budget constraints. We still have things on the horizon that we are looking out for, increasing utility costs. There's a lot of unknowns. And our need for long-term financial sustainability is incredibly important. Not the only thing, but it is one major thing. And we're going to continue to have a commitment to strong middle school program. That's going to be highly important for us. There is a timeline revision. So originally we had asked for consolidation to begin during the 27-28 school year. We are asking for an extension of that for a number of reasons. It's really going to allow time for operational planning. I think we had an ambitious timeline to get this done in a year. Improve the fidelity. We want to make sure that we're doing this the right way. Creating more time for meaningful stakeholder involvement for people's voices to be heard, to share how they feel. Reducing the transition risks, that there are things that we are missing, and to really ensure that the work is thoughtful and transparent for the district, for our community. So we are making a recommendation to you to continue to pursue a middle school consolidation from 3 to 2, extending that timeline to the 28-29 school year. So that would give us next year, 26, 27, 27, 28 to go through our planning. Establish formal working groups beginning this summer. We would like that directive to start as soon as we can, and to continue detailed planning, communication, and stakeholder process. So looking at our middle school planning committee groups, we have a lot of work that needs to be done. We need a group that's working on our schedule. If we are going to implement a new schedule, it would be best to do this when we're going through the consolidation process and not before. We finalized our staffing and everything is aligned. Looking at teaming, instructional structures, the implementation of MTSS as a part of our middle school program, what that's going to look like. A group that's working specifically on community engagement and communication, developing what that communication looks like, whether that site that we have dedicated to all things consolidation. We need a group that's working on student transitions, school culture. We've heard that that's very important. That's going to include, school mascots. What are we, what do our schools look like? Is everything, how will our students be a part of that and have a voice as part of the new school culture? Staffing and human resources group is going to be critical. What is the transfer process going to look like? Looking at certifications, placement needs, nutrition, and staffing projections that we're going to have, how this is going to work. We also are going to do a transportation and boundary planning. We had experience doing this during the elementary rezoning. I think lessons to do and some things not to do, and some things to do a little bit differently. We will have better maps. And looking at the costs related to that. And finally, really importantly, logistics and operations in our facilities. We're going to need to look very closely, get ICS involved to help us look at classroom spaces, labs. I talked about art. I talked about music. I talked about STEM. It's going to be a lot to analyze these to make sure what we have in the spaces and what would have to change, any potential renovations or modifications that would take place. And in the end, we have to move everything. We've got to get all of our stuff out of the school and into other schools, and it's not an easy process. So each of these groups will be composed of administration, be composed of our teaching staff, community members. We will be looking for support from all of our stakeholder groups to help share and have a voice in this process. The proposed timeline is to begin establishing our groups this summer and into next fall. Start some of the initial planning of this. During fall, we would hold some formal public hearings regarding consolidation and give people a chance to ask questions. Continue with our working groups. During the winter, we would be preparing some board review of the feedback and recommendations that we're getting from each one of our working groups. In the spring, we'd be looking for a formal board vote on consolidation, which by law must be at least 90 days after our formal hearings. Then during the 27-28 school year, we would continue that work in terms of planning, the transition activities, the staffing and assignments, kind of finalize those for the consolidation. And we would be looking at full implementation beginning August 2028, begin the 28-29 school year. Any questions about our working groups or the proposed time?
My only question, if no one else has one, there's all that. This is a lot. So thank you for putting this together because there's so many moving parts to all this. What is the plan for the working groups? Like that all feeds up into admin then? There's feedback from the working groups and admin and that's great. Just my normal, like even when it's a tough situation, sometimes there's little things that can help. and just kind of making sure that those lines of communications are coming up also, you know, like from the staff on the ground who are like, you know, what would help with this though? Make it really a little bit easier if we did blah. Like the small things, just making sure we're keeping that communication line open also. Which, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's critically important.
Which I think it's great because with the working groups, they will be a part of it, right? It will be staff.
And our plan is hopefully to come back to you and give you formal updates throughout the entire process so that we can have, hey, this is where we're at with staffing. This is where we're at with our logistics, our planning. So, you know, where we're at with scheduling. So we would be bringing that back to you.
Is there going to be any overlap between the membership of each of the groups? Or are they going to
be
be
in all of them?
Hmm?
I'll be in all of them.
Other than you?
Other than me?
Yeah. A burnout's a thing. That's why I'm asking. A lot of the tasks could overlap each other. And if you've got people that are in multiple
Fortunately,
groups-
I already have people identified who will be doing this. Different people. Ernest, you're already.
You're everybody, Ernest.
Volunteered.
I'm ready.
Voluntold.
There's a lot of people going to be volunteered. Teachers will be volunteered. Administrators will be.
It's a great distinction. Thank you.
So by pushing this off a year, you're dramatically affecting our budget, which is going to force us to raise taxes again.
Yeah.
So why did you
I-
change it from 2 years to 1 year? Or why did you change from 1 year to 2 years?
Now,
Is that
if we were thinking about doing this and in 1 year saying, okay, we are going to commit to closing the school and we're getting rid of X number of teachers. If we were doing that, I would say yes. But I think what we've brought forward is a proposal to say we would like to do this through attrition. And I think over this 2-year period, we can look, I've shown you the class sizes. We can continue to do attrition reductions throughout this over that 2-year period that you will begin to see or continue to see reductions in those costs. So I wouldn't say that it's going to completely blow our budget out of the water, but yes, it does delay those changes by 1 year.
So what other ways are you going to save some money then besides this? We looked at a 3-year plan that included this number, and now we're changing it. So the numbers aren't going to change. I mean, we're still going to be in a whole lot of money.
We were
What
going
are
to
we-
continue to be doing what we've been doing this time, is digging in and looking very closely at every budget that we have, looking at personnel, looking at every expenditure. So that work will continue.
It's got to improve a little, I think. There's a big hole in the budget, and this is just making it worse. My 2 cents. But
Point well taken. So in terms of a recommendation to the board, we ask that you give us direction to continue to pursue a consolidation, supporting this timeline for the 28-29 school year for the consolidation. Authorize us to begin working on our working groups and continue that planning process. Continue our community engagement and our analysis. Asking that you allow us to provide you with periodic updates throughout this process that's going on. Obviously, when we return in August and September, we can come back and let you know where we are. And to continue monitoring enrollment trends. The ask is going to be for 27-28 school year that we begin conducting another study with that 10-year projection. So if you recall, the presentation was did it during the 24-25 school year. So I'm asking for this to be started during the 27-28 school year. A little earlier than we would, but I think it is necessary. Any other questions?
So I don't really have a question, but I do want to thank you for all of the work that you have done on this and will continue to do on it. I know initially, to Ron's point, we were shown the numbers for 1 year, but with all the questions that we've had, the community's had, the staff has had, and really being able to get all the information to make our decision, it does make sense to extend it to 2 years and to also have, to your point, Ron, for Sean to show us what those numbers look like. the financial situation is a part of it, but it's not the only part of it. So I see, and I really like what I'm seeing and how it's going to be worked out, and taking the time, making sure that we're getting all of our stakeholders involved in getting these answers and figuring out, is this the right thing to do? So I definitely think that I prefer the 2-year, and with the wanting the directive of waiting, of doing the 2 years as opposed to the one, with the committee to see, I know I've talked to some, but I want to know your thoughts on moving it to waiting for the 2, having all this work done in 2 years and then going from there as opposed to the 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to do this right. And I think Sean has spoken to the number.
It prolongs, I mean, obviously there's
Yeah.
going to be, it's not going to be the same number, to Ron's point, but at the same time, it's that balance, right? We're trying to do what's right for our students and also the financial piece. And I think doing it this way with what's been shown, and continue, because there's still questions. We have a lot, right? The scheduling, but it gives you that time to really do it right. And that's what we want. Well, good.
I feel like my preference is to not do it at all. I'd like to keep all 3 middle schools up and running, but financially, it's a hard decision to make. And I think until we see the 3-year plan rolled out without the 3.3 million, I believe was the number, closing, I don't think we can I don't think we can drive towards any decision at all until we've seen those numbers written out.
Last month you did propose 1 year.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you thought it could be done. Maybe it would be tight, but.
Could we do it? Yes. Does it provide a little, greater possibility of error? Definitely. It will be rushed. We're going to have to do a lot of work in a short period of time.
I just think we need to reserve judgment, or at least a vote until we see the
There's
final.
no
We're not
vote.
voting.
It's no, we're not voting. It's
I understand.
just the directive, or just to say, okay, we're going to start now, because there's clearly there's a lot of
work.
to start doing
Absolutely.
that work now in that goal. That's what it is. There's no vote until I think next year, April or something.
The vote would be in the spring
So next year, right.
of next year. So that would be early.
It's almost a year.
But we have to decide if it's 1 or 2 now. Otherwise,
Right, that's-
can't tell you that. So to your point, we should seek feedback on that and come up with a consensus.
But
You
we
got to
did,
give the,
No, I think
Yeah.
the consensus that I've received is to go forward
well, to go forward, but
with
in a
the
time.
2-year plan.
with the 2-year plan.
I feel like if we're looking at this at what's at the best interest of the student, right? That's why we're up here, to look at everything from the student's eyes and what is best for our students. I think to not rush this plan, I think the elementary rezoning felt a little rushed for the community. And I think, admin did a great job reacting on the fly, but if it's really better for the students, for the district to take their time and plan this as best as they can, I think that's where our main responsibility needs to be. What's best for the student.
We are making that recommendation because we think it's the best thing to do. Thank you.
Is case survey results.
Just pausing for a second. Last time I got up, 30 people left, so
budget cuts.
Just want to make sure Tim McCann is staying, and we should be in good shape.
My Wi-Fi time is up.
All right, thank you. So Dr. Palmer and I will talk about the PACE survey, which we actually received April 30th. So about a month ago, a little over a month ago, we received the results. For timing purposes, just so the group is aware, the PACE administration took place in November of 2025 during that first half of the month for 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. The profile report that we received included comparison data for the district from 2021 and 2025. We did not participate in PACE in 2023. You'll also see as we go through some of these charts and graphs that the information that we received compares what Pennridge School District looks like to the state. Another important piece of this is that the survey is completely anonymous and confidential, so identifiable information for students is not accessible to the district or to the public. Above, you'll see those are the different areas that student respondents had to share information about. I'll keep that up on the screen for a moment. The demographic information that you see above is actually percentage information. So if you look at the district in 2025, a little over 1,400 students participated in the survey. And then you see a breakdown with numbers and percentages. Of that 1,406 students that participated, sixth grade represented 25.7% of the student survey takers. So those aren't percentages for what a grade looked like. Those are based on the 1,400 students that took the survey. If we break that down further, and what you won't see in terms of demographics on the slide, when you look at our 6th and 8th grade participation rate for those who were eligible to take the PACE, 83% of students who were eligible to take the survey took the survey. 10th grade, that percentage was 81%. And then what was underwhelming was the 12th grade participation, which we'll have to review when we administer that survey, but that percentage was 45% for 2025. And the state percentage participation rate for seniors was 60%. Our overall district participation level was 72% when you look at all those grade levels again, 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades.
Those numbers are of the total surveys, not of the total
Correct.
grade. That
Yes.
was confusing.
Right, yeah, that was information. I think it was unnecessary, but that was a part of the
You'd like to know how, what by grade, what
yes.
sounds like you only had 26% of people doing it.
As Mr. Johnson said, there is significant amount of data. We've got this a little while ago. This is the actual A's data in my hand here. Many, many pages of graphs and tables and responses. So you're seeing a small fraction of what's there. Highlights. So we'll be digging in this into more detail as we move forward. But if you're looking at these graphs, again, we didn't have data from 2023, so you only see data from 21 and 25. You'll see a dot on each of the slides. That represents the state average for this current year, for the 2025 A's. And then you see a triangle, which is representing the monitoring the future, where it says MTF 2025. Monitoring the future is a national survey that's done. This study is a longitudinal study that gets done with students throughout the country. So it allows us to kind of compare ourselves to both the state and to national on some of these questions. So looking at this first slide, this would be looking at students 30-day use, not lifetime, have you ever tried it? But in the last 30 days, have you used alcohol, marijuana, inhalants, and vaporing? And one of the takeaways here you'll see is that we have significant decreases from 2021 for alcohol. You see it again for decreases, particularly in the 12th grade, for marijuana, 10th grade decreases, and again, and we are below the state and national values for each of those. And again, vaping and e-cigarettes, you see a precipitous decrease from our 2021 results. So for us, that is a positive trend. So each of the graphs will have this same kind of shape.
What do you attribute that to?
That's a great question. We're not totally sure, but that's what
I
we'll be
appreciate
working
the
on.
honesty. Yeah, I mean, that's.
We have a lot of work to
interesting,
do.
but it's,
And I think to your point, Mr. Wers, that's a piece of that 120-page report that we received from Pays. What does some of this information mean to us? How do we compare it to the group in 2021, which again, every 2 years, this is a biennial survey, and this is the 18th survey for Pays across the Commonwealth. So what does this information mean? That's going to be a part of how we end this presentation, but a part of it will be digging into the data from 21, 25, looking at trend data based off of groups that are not separate groups, not new students, but what did that 10th grade class look like that took the test in 2025 when they're seniors, and kind of track back from 8th grade, 10th grade to 12th grade. We can't do that with the current senior class because they didn't participate in the survey in 2023. And I think it's somewhat unfair to look at a student that may have taken it in 8th grade compared to how they felt in their senior year. There's just a little bit of a difference from a standpoint of maturity, developmental momentum, early childhood versus adolescence. So there are a lot of different factors. And I want to point out the fact that, again, this survey was administered during that first half of November, so the earlier part of the school year, which speaks to some of these questions when they ask about the last 30 days compared to the last 12 months. So think about it from that, the earlier part of the school year, and not really anytime recently. So that first item really addresses the overall mental health in the past month. Has it been good? And again, this is a new item for 2025. And when looking at this new item and comparing it to the state, we see we are above the state based on those 2025 results. And that's that first column all the way over to the left. As Dr. Palmer indicated, that dot indicates what represents the state. And then that bar, again, only represents 2025 because it is a new item. That second area focuses on feeling depressed or sad in the past 12 months. We show, again, results under the state, which is a positive. However, we show slight increases in middle school when comparing 21 and 25. Wish they use different colors, maybe a shade of red versus blue. I don't, purple, whatever that is. But that's what we got. That's what it looked like. The last item focuses on self-harm, which I think is important, and that looks at the last 12 months. That provides us with some encouraging statistics. We see a significant dip among students in 10th and 12th grades when you look at 21 versus 2025. Keep that up for a moment.
I feel like it's almost like a flip, even though the numbers are lower.
Mhm.
Or it went up as it went up in grades, and now it seems like the more the struggles are in middle school.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and that speaks to perhaps what kind of programming do we have at the middle school with our counselors, with our social workers. So again, it gives us some direction in terms of what do we need to look at in terms of mental health concerns across the district. Another interesting data point, and this question essentially asks, who is that does a student have a trusted adult to speak to, or a person that they can speak to and identify as offer support? The first area, look at parent, what I'll call guardian or caregiver, as they report above the statistics for the state and shows results hovering around 40% at each grade level. So what does that tell us? That tells us that kids are talking to their parents, maybe not everybody, but a decent percentage of kids. And then if you look at the next set, when they talk about 2 steps over, talk about friends, that's at about 44% overall. And guess what happens? As children get older, they talk to their friends more than their parents, which I think we can all attest to. Then you look at teacher or school personnel, we're a little bit below the ratio for the state. But again, speaks, I guess, positively to the parent-caregiver relationship opposed to the school. So I think that's also an area that we need to look at, although we don't want kids necessarily divulging their life story to a teacher or to a school nurse or to any member of the school personnel. I would like to dig further into that data to see, I would like them actually to separate that question out as opposed to just school personnel, break it down to counselor versus social worker versus teacher versus school nurse. It just kind of combines that information, which that'll be some feedback that I give to the paid survey people, if they care. I think this is Lee Rush's favorite slide. He's here. Speaks to screen time. And we only, again, this is a snapshot of the information that's contained over 100 pages of information that we received. We broke that down into, I think we have 15 slides here. But this is interesting data as well. In terms of phones with internet access, which I think I don't know of a phone that doesn't have. It's an interesting question. But there are high statistics within this area, and it's comparable to the state. You can see that dot is almost identical to where we are as a district. The screen time question per school day is alarming. When you look, and I know it's small, but as you slide over to the right, it gives information about hours. Again, I'm not sure how clear this question was. Does it mean how much time you're on the phone during the school day? I presume not. I would imagine that it's Monday through Friday, that total amount of time. But again, different kids could have interpreted it differently. But if you look at 2 to 3 hours versus 4 or more hours, which are those last 2 sections, that information is pretty alarming in terms of the amount of time and the percentage of kids, not only in Pennridge, but across the state, who are on their phones for minimally 2 to 3 hours or more than 4 in the school day. Mr. McMullen.
Quick question on the bottom one, the screen time per school day. Is that broken out? Is that just all screen time, including, say, school issued laptops for classwork?
Just the
That's a good question.
Okay.
It doesn't tell us.
I think because it actually clarifies the top one with has a phone to access the internet.
Yes, versus this question.
Versus that one, it's not apples to apples.
Can you find that out? Be sure. I mean, it's not on their phone 4 hours in school. It's in front of a screen.
Screen time.
Is that okay? That's not okay. Thank you for asking.
Another quick question about the access to the internet. You know, we could ask maybe a better question would unrestricted access to the internet, because there are a lot of parental access control applications that parents could. I mean, I did, but I'm in IT, so it's easier for me to do it that way. So I'm aware, but I'd love to see those numbers. You know,
It's too late for me, but I'll call you for some family members. Maybe you can help.
I got you.
Working over a phone and a laptop tonight.
Yeah.
Just another reason why we should get rid of this phones in school.
Be interesting to see how that affects bill to bill, how that affects this line and.
Yeah, I think one of the things we'll talk about as we move forward is getting a little more data about kids specifically and their use of phones during the school day or at nighttime. And I think those are things we want to learn about our kids. so that we can address it. I get to talk about gambling. We see a precipitous decrease in our students gambling from the 2021 school year. However, I think how kids are gambling, when we look closely at this, there is an increase in students gambling on. So since 2021, there were increases in how students are going about that. So students doing it in games or online forums for. But we are below the state and significantly decrease. We also look at community climate and safety. I think for us, one of the important things, is how our students feel. On this one, we're looking at I feel safe at school, which is the third one over. We see increases for our students, and they're significantly above what they were in 2021, thankfully, up in that 90% range of our kids feeling safe at school. If you look at the last one, my teachers praise me when I work hard in school. That's something
Hold on,
that is increased.
Dr. Palmer, I think
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mullen had a question.
That's okay. In 2021, we were still dealing with plexiglass in the
Yes.
classrooms and masks. So I think
I certainly hope the kids feel safer and that they seem to have better mental health.
Yeah.
So I would agree.
okay.
And the last one, teachers praise my hard work in school, which is something that has increased, and we are above the state. But I would love to see those be even higher for our kids when they feel like they're getting a pat on the back when they do a job. But well done.
What is that little section in the bottom, the parentheses, where it says students answering yes with an exclamation?
Excited.
Like what, how does that relate to the graph?
right.
Obviously-
Right above the district 2025 key at the bottom.
Districts
So the
answering yes or yes.
Is it capital yes with an exclamation versus lowercase yes? Like
Not sure.
yes or just yes?
I believe the yes or yes in that graph is ways kids were responding to it. Those were choices.
It's like very likely or somewhat likely.
Yeah, those were the
Should
answers.
have it.
Okay.
That's probably a scale.
Yeah, we're not showing you
Just
what
guessing.
all of the questions look like and their choices, but
Yeah.
yeah, some of them are a little weird.
It's very
Yes.
strange way to do that.
It's definitely strange.
Yes.
I don't know high schoolers. That yes exclamation point does not mean yes. It means yes.
There's
That's what-
inflection as well. Yeah.
I want you to audition for the next play, because that was an emphatic yes. I
Yes.
think that's what that meant.
Please.
This next chart, really, if you look all the way to the left, is regarding bullying and what the experience has been like. And again, this survey was administered in November, what that looked like, what the results are. And this really speaks to the information that comes to my attention as a student services director, Title IX compliance officer, the limited number of reports that I receive. And again, I think we've encouraged at board meetings, at different community events for people to report. Thanks to Mr. Thomas, the forum and the board's recommendation has been streamlined online. It's a digital form. It gets submitted to me right away. And then I send it to the principals and we execute an investigation immediately. So I think some of this data speaks to that, the hard work of the district, and even prior to, I think, our arrival, that those results aren't escalated. People, I think, feel comfortable submitting reports. I've received a few over the last few months. I'm not sure if it's a direct result of the form being online, but I think it is easier and more accessible for parents. And I think that was the goal of the board, the superintendent, and the cabinet, is to get that information and be able to respond to that with the support of the building administrators.
You also have an increase in 6th and 8th grade of bullying along with poor mental health.
Which makes sense. You think about
Yeah,
that.
no, it does. It's an area that needs
That
to be
age
worked
group. And that's really, I think, could produce some targeted programs within that area on the specific topic.
Middle
of
school is
bullying.
tough.
Yeah, I think
It
it
is
needs to
tough for
start-
kids. It's
Everything changes. Middle school.
Start it in elementary.
I think that's
It's, that's kind of what I circled that, and I said, what plans can be put in place to address pre-middle school, right? So we're setting them up to have the tools and the coping mechanisms when they come up to 6th grade.
And I think that speaks to a program that we did earlier this year for our 3rd through 5th graders through NAMI. And, you know, they got superhero mask at the end of that. And that was a very good program, 60 classroom presentations over the course, I believe it was 5 weeks, focused on what does kindness look like? Do you have a trusted adult? Various themes that parents had the right to opt out of. And I believe we received less than 10 requests throughout the district, again, 3 to 5 for parents to opt out. So parents were clearly interested in that type of programming for their children. So we
see
need to
more
bring
programming like that?
Yes.
Like once a year is.
I like that
Start.
in elementary. I feel like I do see it in elementary, but I feel like we lack it in middle school. Clearly
Yeah,
shows it.
definitely an
In
area.
elementary, to your point, in elementary, I do see it, that they have that. But on middle school, I'm not sure I see it. Where are we having this for these students? And that's really where we see the struggle. So that's something that we can do. I mean, looking at this, what can we do for our middle schoolers?
Thank you.
One of the important things to look at is willingness to use substances. It's really centered around alcohol and drugs. So fortunately, we're seeing a decrease in students' willingness to try alcohol before 21. We see a significant drop, particularly in the 10th grade and 12th grade students. Again, students' willingness to try marijuana before 21, we see a significant drop there in the 10th grade population, the 12th grade population. And our students are below the state average, which for us is a very good sign. One of the other important things we look at in the PAYS are protective factors and risk factors. Sorry, it's a little bit complicated on this one. So if we're looking at protective factors, the things that the PAYS looks at is they kind of group these into 4 categories: community factors, family factors, school factors, and peer and individual factors. So they look at the types of things that would help students to move away from drugs and alcohol and antisocial behaviors, engaging in things like violence. And for us, looking at these for our students, the highest protective factors that we have are family attachments, family opportunities, pro-social involvement, and family rewards for pro-social involvement. I think Mr. Johnson had pointed out earlier that we do have this strong family connection in our community, and that is really proved out in our data, so that students have opportunities to do things like, you know, my parents involve me in family decisions, or my parents talk to me and do things, special things with me, or my parents reward me when I do good things. The lowest here are community rewards for pro-social behavior. Students don't feel like they are looked upon positively necessarily by engaging in those pro-social activities, and opportunities for pro-social involvement in school, which I think for us is something that I think we would be looking very closely at. Kids, this is involving kids' opportunities to do things like participate in events within their school, or receive praise from staff. So that kind of was teased out in some of the questions that we had looked at.
Where does this fall with the state data, or you do not get that?
This doesn't provide any sharing with the state data. The purpose of the risk factors and the protective factors is to help each community or school kind of look at ways or things that they could target to help prevent kids from engaging in behaviors.
How do we do in the last one?
That's a great question. So we could have to go back to our 2021 and kind of compare those factors. Risk factors are the other ones. There's many more risk factors than there are the protective factors, but again, they fall into that community, family, school, and peer and individual. In the risk factors, the highest risk factors there were low commitment to school, parent attitudes towards antisocial behavior, and sensation seeking. So students' attitudes towards school might be things like saying, I think school is important. I love going to school. Those are the types of questions they might be getting. Parent attitudes towards antisocial behavior are questions like, how upset would your parents be if you had a drink, stole something from a store, or skipped school? Those are the kind of questions that so those were the highest risk factors that we came out with: commitment to school, parent attitudes, sensation seeking. And the lowest factors were friends' use of drugs, which came out to us, I think, important that kids view their friends as not using drugs or being interested in using drugs. And interactions with antisocial peers, that is, kids aren't interacting with kids that are doing bad things. And the last one was availability of handguns, which is another, was on the risk factor that would make your community unsafe for kids.
What is sensation seeking?
Sensation seeking are like questions be like, hey, would you try anything if it was going to feel good? Questions like that.
So the final slide, and we've talked about this a little bit, is what are our next steps? And the next steps really are digging into the data, really taking a strong look at trends from, again, even though this profile report only provides information for 2021, and we did not participate in 2023, looking back at other profile reports prior to see if the data looks similar or vastly or starkly different. And then that will guide some of our next steps. But I think from a mental health perspective, we look at some of the data that's already seen and what kind of programming can we have at the middle school and elementary school level in particular, which is, I think, our most vulnerable time in school. We're not as mature. We're trying to figure out who we are, our identities as children. And so I think that's really what we need to do in terms of next steps, involving other people besides the two of us or the five of us as a cabinet, school counselors, school social workers, school nurses, teachers, and maybe forming some sort of committee to review this 120-page report with it broken down on a similar level to this, but maybe 30 slides instead of 50. Any questions, thoughts?
Oh, no, I think we'd like to see what we're going to do, some presentation at some point. But these are the things we're going to do because of the survey.
Absolutely.
We've had people say that we don't use the data for anything. And I think we got one already tonight, which was eye-opening with the middle school. So I would love to see concrete items that this is what we're going to do as a role to us analyzing data. Not immediately, but I'd like to see that in the near future.
Absolutely.
I mean, the years we did it, we always used the data. There was always presentations and something that came out of it.
Last time we did it was in 21, right?
Yeah. But my kids were taking it then, and there were a lot of emails about the results and what they're doing.
Oh.
They always used it.
Yeah, I think to echo what Ron said, and another sort of on top of that, what do you think a realistic timeline would be to have this data reviewed and sort of some like actionable goals written down and presented to us?
I would think the fall before the spring, maybe at a November or December committee meeting.
You can start some of it earlier, though.
I'm starting tomorrow.
Okay. You know what you need. You don't need to wait till November to start the ideas in the middle school.
Right, but in a formal presentation, sure. Yeah.
As a parent of a 12th grader, how do we think we can get more of them answering it? Because I'm looking at some of these, I'm like, I think we need more of them.
More than the
participate.
45%, sure.
Yeah.
I think one easy change is the time of the day that we administered instead of that during Rams time, which is when it was administered, a time where we know the seniors are in. If I'm a senior, I'm probably not coming during Rams time either. So
that's a big deal.
We need to give it during a time where people are in the seats. Again, that's relatively easy to do. coming back up.
Okay, go.
Right, so next we have the overview of athletics and activities committee work. We'll have Mr. Petty and Mr. Robbins for that presentation. In addition, we'll be giving out the peace survey. Everybody, the whole report.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
Thank you. I fat fingered it. So.
I figured. Yeah, yeah.
What is this now?
The civil
Student services. I missed it. I closed it out.
look, it all came out. Yeah. Stop. It's normally freezing in here.
Yeah, it's usually cold. Oh, I mean,
Always warm.
Always freezing in here.
Good evening, everyone.
good evening.
Mr. Hunton and myself are here to give
I know.
basically an executive summary over a year's worth of work with the Secondary Athletic and Activities Committee. But I want to reverse a little bit because go back to the curriculum meeting just for a minute because Dr. Barrios brought up Act 158. And tomorrow we have this small event going on here at school called graduation. And I think it's important just to take a look from the class of 2026 with 100% confidence. Every graduate was Act 158. So that process is an ongoing process, and it just shows that there are different pathways, but we're working with all the students. So I just wanted to add that. Second piece to it was we didn't plant, and John, I didn't catch your last name, but we didn't plant you in the crowd to come up to give public comment about our report. But I just wanted to thank you for that positive feedback. The one thing though is as we go through this, I do think we are addressing the athletics, the activities and our groups collectively through what our priorities are as far as moving forward. That yes, we want to be mindful though, when we're talking about this, we're very mindful of the financial implications of this entire presentation and what we want to do. But we want to be mindful of the work that Dr. Barry take on of taking a very comprehensive look at our athletic programs, at our activities, our groups, and saying, how is it that we can best plan to move forward to provide best experience for all of our students? That is both in the classroom, curriculum, but it's also outside of the classroom. Because I'll always come back and say, when you ask a kid, like, what was your, like in graduation tomorrow, they're not going to come up and talk to you about what AP test or what they scored in Keystones. They're going to tell you about the activities that they did and the connections that they made, and that's an equal part of the educational process. So, as we took a look at this, we put this slide up to give that broad overview of all of the stakeholders that were involved in any of our discussions. And it went from district administration to building level administration. The school board members were an active member of it, booster club parents, coaches, representation from the arts, representation from the music, representation from Unified. We wanted to engage as many stakeholders from the most broad perspectives to give us input in anything that was going to be happening with the school. We also met 6 different times and actually had some virtual meetings as well to work through. So when you take our charge was simple: examine the current states of programs and facilities, assess program needs through data, stakeholder input, and then establish broad goals and come back and make recommendations to the board. And we think we did, I know we did a very good comprehensive job of doing this. So when we talk about core values and shared beliefs, we wanted to start the program with giving an overview of why, an overview of who. And this was one component of what we did through the committee work, but through this core valued and shared beliefs, over the course of 3 meetings, we really worked with everybody to develop a shared vision of what we wanted Pennridge's athletics, secondary athletics, and activities to look like. So not huge at reading, but this was the collective consensus of the committee as far as our vision statement. So we view this as our foundational purpose, our North Star. So any decisions that are made, we would like to bring it back to this definition, where Pennridge School District athletics and activities empower all students to strive for excellence and achievement to realize their maximum potential. Our programs elevate, challenge, and inspire students to grow as leaders, competitors, and community members, fostering a lifelong pride in being part of Pennridge. We are committed to providing safe, modern, and well-maintained on-campus facilities, along with the space, resources, and visibility needed for every program to thrive. Guided by equity, we believe that all students have full access to participate, to excel, and to experience the transformative power that comes with participation in extracurricular activities. Pretty powerful. And the interesting part when you were going through this, it was the student athletes and some of the students who were the most passionate about some of the words, because when you're trying to work through this, people get caught up in semantics.
The
But
amount of time spent on that last sentence, rewording and just making sure grammatically it was smooth. There was a lot of time was spent on it.
But again, we wanted to set this up and share this because as we're making decisions, the whole purpose of this would be say, okay, does this decision fit this vision of where we want to go? Additionally, what we came up with was a tagline, and this was actually student generated. So this would be our beacon, right? We also see this as part of a branding effort, as well as unifying all of our programs, our pride, our Pennridge. So this committee actually didn't pick this. What we did was, as a committee, we did some exercises to come up with a list of 10. And then during our winter celebration event, and Mr. Hunt will get into that more, we actually kicked this back to the student body, and they voted on what they wanted the tagline to be. So there's student choice here. So as a committee, when we're coming to the board, we have now have a vision a vision statement that we can guide to, and we have a tagline that we can refer to as far as what is our purpose. I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Hunt so he can speak a little bit further about our work.
Thank you, Mr. Ketty. So what you see here was kind of the outline of our events. So our first meeting, obviously, we get to know each other, we get to explain who we are, and then we spend some time going through our programs, our participation numbers, and the overview of what our campuses look like and what we offer. And I'll go over those in some future slides. And then we had our anchoring activity that really helped us to develop our domains and our priorities moving forward in our celebrations and challenges. And that was kind of a gallery walk of sorts where people were putting groups and they walked around with each other and they told us, what do we love about Pennridge? What do we think? What do we do well? What do we need to do better? And how do we do it? So we took that activity and that helped us to develop an impact and feasibility study where Mr. Ketty will explain more about that process later. And then we've already covered our core values and our shared beliefs. And then ultimately we'll close with what the recommendations of the committee are. All right, so these slides are taken right from our original meeting, but this is the programming offerings. You can see at the middle school, we offer some balance there each season where we have cheer, co-ed soccer, football, and hockey at all three schools. And then same thing, cheer continues in winter with boys and girls basketball and wrestling, which is also, one of our higher profile sports here in this community. And then spring track and field, obviously, where you're going to see a bigger number of students participating, because that's the largest roster sport in America. All right, so you can see our participation numbers here. Cheer struggles a little bit in the last couple years. I think that there's just a challenge in I guess coming together. There's a lot of different cheer opportunities already offered here in the community. So trying to build that back up at the middle school that helps fill it into our high school programs is a goal of ours long term. But you can see that really strong numbers at all of our schools. There's some challenges at South. I think that's just due to a lower number of enrollment and trying to match the opportunities there. And it's more particular in some of our female sports, softball. We're rolling out there with 10. We have an injury, an illness, or something like that. We're in the jeopardy of not having enough kids to play. And in basketball, you have 9 kids out there. can't actually have a scrimmage unless you have some team managers. But elsewhere, really strong numbers, and the track and field numbers are, real promising. And we'll talk about some.
Mr. Hunt, I would just add that we did have concerns about from the consolidation that students would lose their ability to participate.
Right.
Do you think that we have the opportunity to maybe expand participation for kids?
I think expansion is going to have to be a part of that process when you do some consolidation, because I just think there's especially on the girl side, there's such a boom in flag football. I know that our wrestling coach, who's part of this committee, he goes out and volunteers his time over at the middle schools for the girls wrestling club, and there's some I can tell you, as my kid's a wrestler, there's some really solid female wrestlers over here. I think most of them are actually at Siler, so they'll be over at Central soon. But I mean, you're talking about kids who compete on the world level at Reno Worlds, and they're heading out and competing against kids from all over the planet. So it's a growing sport. It's something that I don't know if we can create new gyms at schools, but they're creating time for those kids. And I do think flag football is here to stay, and it's only going to take off. And I can tell you that it's probably, if you come to a flag football game here at the high school, there's no team having more fun than that group of girls.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
For sports that, let's say what you were saying, let's just say cheer at one of the schools only has 2 people that are interested, but then at the other schools they have more. Has there ever been a time that those 2 people could go to the other schools to participate? If, let's say, the parents were to drive them over, is there that option so that
We could definitely explore that option if we see a need. I mean, we had some concerns with football at South because the numbers were so low, about maybe possibly combining them with North, who had lower numbers. Central has a ton of football players, and I think the identity that those schools wanted was like they wanted to try to make it work on their own. I know Mr. Donaldson worked really hard to recruit kids to get out there to play. It's also just kids are into different things in different parts of this community too. Some kids are more soccer oriented. Some kids are more track and field oriented. I think being involved with Green Jackets, I know that there's a lot of kids from North that were making up the bigger numbers of that organization.
But you've never seen, let's say, if they're.
Oh yeah, we've seen it. In my previous employment, we would combine schools all the time.
Here, though, have we seen that?
I've only been here for 10 months. So, but if it was something we needed to do for kids, we want kids playing. So.
Yeah.
All right. So then we reviewed some of our campuses and we gave them the satellite view, and it's real pretty from the Google Earth images that we get here. But what you don't see here for this is Central Middle School is there is that baseball field at the top right there. That's actually not regulation for our kids. So we can probably have maybe a little bit of a practice over there, but you could never play a game, and you're really limited in space back there, and you're putting a lot of balls over into the neighbor's property too. So now we got kids hopping fences to go into other people's property, which is, not ideal in that situation. So in this case, a lot of our kids are, the baseball team is being shipped over to Deep Run on a daily basis, which is putting a little bit of a burden on our transportation department, but it's also pulling kids out of that 11th period where they're not getting that maybe the remediation that they need. Some of their classes are taking up some of their other interests because it's now that opportunity. And there's also no track here for those kids. So they're running in the bus lane over here. Mm-hmm.
Going back for a second to to Ms. Sharino's question about if we have students at one middle school that want to participate in a sport, but there's not enough interest in that, getting them to another school, that's something that we would be able to leverage our transportation department to make sure that we're able to get them there. Because I can't imagine most parents are able to pick up their students from one school, drop them off at another, then go do whatever, then come pick them up again. That's something that
we'd have to explore that, what the options are to get the person there.
Okay, great.
So that was Central. Then we go to, wrong way here. My apologies. We go to South. You can see there's a partial track there from the old Papa Yoder. Doesn't go quite around that back entrance there to the gymnasium. And actually the property to the right where the soccer field is drawn in, that actually belongs to the Owls organization. And they let us use that. And in that tree line with the shadows, there's a softball field, but there's also no baseball here as well for South Middle School. So those kids are getting on a bus daily to go to James Memorial Park to have baseball practice.
And we use the Owls Field in exchange for caring for it as well, that our guys
So
go out there and cut
in
it.
both cases, like we're sending our guys all over the community to Deep Run, James Memorial. If we get in a pinch, Hilltown Civic, but they don't usually give you that field until May because they have drainage issues over there and they don't want to damage the field. So we're limited in what our baseball and softball footprint is in the community. There's actually only one varsity regulation softball field in the entire Pennridge community, and that's in Druckenmiller Park. And if you've been to Druckenmiller Park, it needs some love. All right, but again, my personal opinion is I have had meetings with different leaders in different townships, and they're excited about Pennridge partnering with them because then they get Pennridge resources coming into things that maybe they don't have the time or the resources or the desire to really want to get moving on.
What's that field on Church Street below the word South Middle School?
That is their field hockey field.
Field hockey. Thanks for bugging me.
No problem. Again, no track. Baseball is off campus. Softball they're able to do here, and a partial track where they can actually run in the cinders over there, and a makeshift soccer field over there in the house. And then lastly, we have the North End High School campus that we share over here on Fifth Street, and lots of field space. What is hard to see here is the slope in a lot of these fields. So this field over here, the lower soccer grass that we use for games, these two are not regulation for soccer. This sideline here is actually 2 feet below the playing area. So if a ball goes out of bounds on the right side, that side of the field, it rolls down a 10-foot hill and it's out of play. This field over here is where our football team will practice because this field is also our track throws field. So there are implement damage all over the field, which would cost, money to put into top dressing, reseeding, just to have kids run all over it and tear it up. This is a practice field, and this is the only field here that has uprights. So we have to play 3 levels of football and then North football at this field because it's the only field with uprights that we have on this campus. So we can't do any special teams outside of that.
And are all the track meets for all the middle schools here?
Yes.
You're stealing my thunder here. So not only, this is our only track.
Yeah.
So we have 6 track teams that use this track on a daily basis in the spring, which limits our availability for our other spring teams, boys and girls lacrosse. So sometimes our boys lacrosse team is practicing after 9 p.m. because they can't get access because a track meet will take anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours to get finished depending on the organization and the number of kids that are showing up. I know a high school track meet, when we're hosting North Penn, it's like we're not getting out of there at 7 because it's like when you have 1,100 kids per grade, there's like 15 kids throwing a javelin and 20 kids throwing a shot put and 45 jumpers. It's an all-day event. So we're really limited in what we can offer our spring teams because this is our only turf field and it's regulation for all of those sports. And it's also just our only field with lights in the entire school district that we can use. That's ours. So the number of teams that want to use it, it's a bigger problem in the fall when you have 2 soccer programs, 2 varsity soccer programs, one very high profile one with our women's soccer program and a field hockey program, and then 3 levels of football, and your marching band wants to use that space too. So we're really strained in what we can accomplish because we don't have enough regulation fields for to have that many levels of kids. And we're one of the larger schools in Suburban 1, and we have thriving numbers, as you'll see in our next slide, with what we offer here. So this is our programming. So I talked about this with Dr. Palmer and Mr. Ketty. We offer everything that the PIAA governs, except for rifle, which I'm sure if you offered it in this town, there'd be plenty of kids that would get involved because it's an avid hunting town, and girls gymnastics. And gymnastics is kind of pricing itself out of high schools just because it's an incredibly expensive sport to to have all of that equipment.
Love it if you brought it.
What's that?
Would love it if you brought it back to the high school.
We would need the Tom Trauger field house. Because that's it. I've taught gymnastics in my phys ed days, and you shut down your gym.
Yeah.
You take down a gym. It's easy to accomplish maybe in an elementary school, but then you have no seating and no space for spectators, and you're still limited in that capacity. It's the
building.
Wrestling and gymnastics, the mother and father of all sports. If your kids are doing them, they're going to be great athletes. But the space that it needs is a lot. All right, and then our participation numbers again. Of all the sports we offer here, this is the 2023, 24, and we had the fall of 26 when we started this because we already had that information available to us. But I did some number crunching after just reviewing this, and depending on the season, you have about 18 to 26% of your high school student population actively participating in sports. If you think about your single sport athletes and your performing arts, like your marching band, which we'll cover in the next slide, you're looking at about 60% or right around of kids participating in athletics and activities and clubs at the high school alone. So we have 1,600 students, and that means we got a lot of kids that are looking to use these spaces and get together with their kids. And I'm glad that Tim talked about it because, I don't think I've ever talked about a math test that I took with my buddies when we get together, but we talk about all the fun times and the crazy games that we went to, or the fun, like the fun trips, or the talent shows and the things that we did when we were kids and having a lot of fun. So there's a lot of things that we're offering here, which is amazing, because I think our marching band is fantastic. Mr. Hall and the job they're doing is great. But we definitely, have some challenges ahead of us. And so after the celebrations and challenges, we ventured into like, what do we need to do better, right? So we came into 4 domains here, and I know that Mr. Ketty will talk about the impact and feasibility part of it, but we talked about our facilities, our programs, our culture, and our resources. So those are the 4 domains that you're going to see that will come out of that one study that we did, and Mr. Ketty will go into our impact and feasibility.
So when we talk about impact and feasibility based on the work that we did, I think it's important to operationally define what we were referring to as far as impact and feasibility. So impact, we operationally defined as how significant is this challenge that we've identified impacting student experience. Feasibility was, okay, we've identified this as being a challenge. Can we rectify this in a 1 to 3 year period? Right? So in those respective areas, from a programming standpoint, when we talked about challenges, and we could have put 90 slides up here, I'm just going to summarize some of the challenges that were identified from a programmatic standpoint. Support and equity, recognition, facility access, lack of middle school music and co-curricular programming were things that were specifically articulated to us throughout this entire process. From a culture and core value standpoint, a sterile environment at high school games, resistance to change. Most of that was from an organizational level. How is it that we can elevate, and this is the way it was put, elevating student leadership voices and what programming looks like and how to impact things. From a facility standpoint, it was very clear. We don't have adequate baseball or softball fields or anything on the high school campus or on any of the middle level campuses that can actually function as serviceable fields. Stadium Wi-Fi, ADA access, limited storage opportunities throughout the district, limited electrical access, not enough lights, resources, old scoreboards, outdated uniforms and equipment. Again, limited storage came back up. Scheduling and access points to field usage. And they're all legitimate concerns. And what was very apparent to us from leading this is that you have very passionate individuals in each one of the respective areas that were there, whether it was the football coach, whether it was the unified coach, whether it was the marching band. When you're walking through this process, they all have their lens on what they think their need is. And they're passionate about it, as well they should be. So that's when we take this impact and feasibility. What we're trying to do is bring this back and say, how is it from a district standpoint, can we address all of these issues in a meaningful way? So as this scatter plot kind of shows you, and it's not the best data point to show you because it probably leads to a lot of questions. However, if you take a look at the bottom, and it's 1 is low impact, 3 is high, and then feasibility is going on the y-axis. Same thing, 1 the high. At least they're grouped. They're all high impact, high feasibility, according to who took this survey. So who took the survey? All of the committee members took it. We pushed it out to some coaches and to some parents as well to actually just get this information. All right, based off of the impact and feasibility, what we did was we went through each ticketed item of how it was rated and then came up with 3 priority buckets based on all of that information. Priority 1, student participation. How are we increasing engagement and how are we developing a school culture and improving in those areas? Priority 2, promotion and communication. We took a look at that from an equity and visibility lens. Right, here's the thing. We had a lot of people coming in and saying, hey, why does everybody just want to go to a football game? Right? Now, the reality of the situation is we could have 3,000 people at a football game because it's a Friday night event. Mr. Hunt brought up our girls soccer program. District final was held on our fields. Might have been 150 people there. Different events draw different people, but I think it's worth taking a look at how are we promoting and how are we communicating all of our programming. And then 3, we really took a look at what are the facility needs, knowing that there's capital planning that would need to go into place to make that happen. So what we wanted to do before we get to the next slides, which is basically our recommendations, we wanted to clearly show that we systematically went through this to try to identify what the community and what people are asking for us to do from a facility standpoint, from an athletic and co-curricular opportunities for all of our students. Oh. So for the committee recommendations in priority 1 for student participation, I'm going to kind of pass the mic off to Mr. Hunt here, because a lot of this stuff we have actually already began to do and are working currently with district administration to do this. So you want to hop in for this?
Yeah, so you can see for like the digital displays, this is one of the things that came up with, especially for our students and some parents who are often in the building. So we're currently exploring what we are using in our schools and in our programming and try to find ways to optimize that so we can either use the current displays that we have or figure out ways to plan for future budget cycles, how to get these things in place so people are aware of the activities that we have going on. Our activity spotlight is definitely something that I want to work on personally, is taken away from this, that like, how are we highlighting our different clubs and activities, and how are we sharing that information out for all that we're getting accomplished here. And then the centralized calendar hub, we're in the middle of a migration because the system we were using was purchased by another system. So there's a big mess right now. So we're trying to find a way, we're seeing what's going to come out on the other side of that so that we can really centralize all these activities so people know what's going on and how they can get involved and how they can get out and see it. From a strengthening school spirit and student leadership opportunities, this is something that we put into place this year, our seasonal pep rallies and celebrations. I know the kids really enjoyed it. The feedback that we got from them, that was really funny. I think our fall pep rally was a big success. We kind of rolled with the steam that football had going, and we did a college game day theme where we had some students, some teachers, and we had administrators at panel up on the stage. But we also invited other members of other teams to come up and talk. We had the girls soccer team give advice to the boys going into a playoff game or going into a championship game. So it was having our one championship team on the girls side give advice to the boys who hadn't been in that light in a few years. So to really give them some guidance, it was really well received. We had some fun, we had some laughs. And then in the winter, we did a winter celebration where we had kids come down. They competed in some games. We gave away some prizes. We rotated some of our clubs and activities and highlighted the things that they were doing, especially our performing arts groups. And Mr. Ketty can talk more about the student-led promotions.
Sure. And one of the things that we've been doing here is instead of doing assemblies where adults are standing in front of kids telling them what they need to do, we actually have been capitalizing on our clubs and our leadership from our different clubs and activities to push that message back out to the students via students. So we've been doing that for 3 years and are just always looking for those opportunities to continue to increase that leadership component. Because everybody knows students don't want to listen to us telling them what to do. Now, there is a time and a place for that. But how are we developing their leadership skills? Because they're going to listen to each other. And the PACE survey showed that more so that they're going to be looking for the teachers and the adults in the building to do that. So I just wanted to add that. And then expanding on early engagement opportunities. Organizing the student athlete and club visits to the elementary school. So if you want to hop in and talk about that.
So right after I got started here, Dr. Barrios and I, we talked about connecting the elementary and the high school kids as much as we could, because we wanted those kids to see the end result, the fun, the types of kids that they could blossom into. So we would have kids that go out and they would do things from helping with homework to working in STEM labs, going to science classes, doing some guest reading spots in the kindergarten. Sometimes teams got invited to go out and just model good behavior at recess, which was, those kids always had a good time. It was exciting for the kids to get out there. The feedback from the kids when they come back is like, can I go back next week? Right? And the kids and the elementary principals always reach out saying this was so amazing. The energy that they brought to the building, the energy that the kids had after they left was wonderful. The egos for some of the kids was great. They were like signing autographs, thinking they're superstars. So, like he's a 15-year-old third baseman on the baseball team and he's signing autographs for kids. But it was cute that the kids really, That's cool. Had that experience. And we really look forward to how do we highlight that again next year? How do we make it better? How do we make it bigger so that it's maybe something that we're seeing like the community can really see that we're doing instead of just hearing about it, right? And then obviously for our teams, we have daily clinics that teams are running out there throughout the season, and they're running some youth camps throughout the summers. And we're all striving to have community night or youth nights where we're inviting elementary students or Deep Run or Yellow Jackets or Green Jackets. We've really done as much as we could to connect the younger kids. We have a team of the week for Green Jackets that gets to come out. The cheerleaders come out with the cheerleaders at the game. The football players get to stand in the end zone and try to replicate the old Papa Yoda energy where the kid would score the touchdown. Then you go run and give his mom a hug because she was sitting by the end zone. Mom's not down on the sideline, but we have the kids out there, and like the football players loved it because they're just like, man, that was so cool. Like there's like 13, 14 kids, and even some of the coaches getting excited for them when they scored. So hopefully we can continue those traditions this year at all sports, not just for football.
Mr. Hunt, could you maybe expand on some of the other civic activities our teams have participated in?
Oh man, so
Just a few would be.
The spirit of volunteerism. Like just recently, our baseball team won their Friday game to get to the District 1 semifinal. And the next morning in the pouring down rain that weekend, that Memorial Day weekend, they got up and they went to Revivals and they were handing out meals to our, our families in need out there for about 3 hours in the rain. Never once complained, and they actually had a great experience. And I think they're really looking forward to those types of opportunities to get back and get involved and help out in the community.
So we identified this as priority one, and I'm going to steal one of Dr. Barrios's lines because these are easy wins. These are leveraging resources that we already have and just taking a look at our programming and certain components of things and saying, hey, we can just do a better job here. So as we move to priority 2, promotion and communication, there's still that mantra there where it's like, okay, how can we be leveraging resources that we already have in a different way to increase promotion, to increase communication? But there are also other broader impacts to this one. So when you talk about expanding a digital promotion and social media presence, so it's expanding athletic activity, social media presence across multiple forms. One of the things that we have done is recently at the high school level identified a content coordinator to be working with Mr. Thomas. So when we talk about social media, there's standard platforms. We'll get to this like SportsU. How are we leveraging our own website? How are we using our newsletters and other media components in a more effective way to actually promote our own activities? Exploring student-led broadcasting and media programming. This actually goes back to the curriculum committee. Now, we've already had multiple meetings at the district level to speak about this, but there's broader implications to this from a curriculum standpoint, as well as our vision of what the program of studies looks like and how our focus on our pathways program is going to lead into this. So this is like this second explore student-led broadcasting media programs. There's a bigger picture there. Now, what we've already done is the Thanksgiving Day game and our playoff games, we actually were able to live stream them with broadcasting. Now, we leverage that with our own resources, the assistant principals from school. We'd like to transition that to be student-led. Improving upon our communications framework. I kind of already spoke about this, but it's also updating our own expectations for coaches, for parents, for kids, developing those communication guidelines so that there is no mistakes and everybody is on the same page. Utilization of promotion of existing platforms, the team pages, the website, and SportsU. We transitioned to that last year where it's a double-blind communication system that all the sports teams have to work through the same system, that Mr. Hunt can monitor everything coming in and coming out. Strengthening our community visibility and partnerships. This is what we see as a possible revenue source. And again, we've already had meetings like this at the district level where we're taking a look at the contracts that we have for sponsorships and saying, we can do a better job. We can be looking at different ways to bring revenue in to highlight our own programs and to utilize the resources, the community partners that we have within our own communities. And then expanding our recognition for student achievements. And this is something that we've been doing already this year. The creation of the RAM Spotlight, but also recognizing student achievements at the school board meetings. We did every month this year, we highlighted different clubs to have them come promote themselves so that people are aware of what's going on. In the next school board meeting, we're going to be doing our spring sport highlight reel on that. It is just taking a look again. I'm not going to say low hanging fruit, but how easy wins where we can just be looking at the current programming we have and how can we improve upon them and leverage those resources. So that's priority 2. Now, do you want to jump in? Because like priority 1 and priority 2, and I know, Mr. Trugger, we've spoken about this, aren't like big asks from the board. Like you kind of can just sit back and be like, yeah, that makes sense. Continue working on that. But what that does is it leads into the priority 3, which is a facilities and capital planning. Based off of the group and the feedback that we got from this committee, we were to expand athletic activities and field capacities. We need to add multi-use turf field at the high school. All right, and though I worded it this way, that incorporates baseball and softball field. The need is, we need functional baseball and softball fields. That is what the data has told us. That is what the numbers tell us, and we don't have that. Increased multi-turf field use would provide all co-curricular activities, all athletes, more access, more practice time. It just makes sense. The electrical access, including lights. When I was first presented with, when I first got here 3 years ago, football was all over me about certain stuff. And they said, we need more turf. We need more turf. We need more turf. Turf is nice. What we need is more lights, because the band can't practice when the girls' soccer team is making a district playoff run. The football team, when they're doing well, needs access to the field, and the band can't have it. There's this constant, like, one of those one of the challenges was scheduling access. There's a choke point that says, okay, we only have lights. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many blocks that you can knock off in an hour and a half or 2 hours for practice. That's just the reality of it. The second piece of that, it was clearly identified that some type of track at the middle school is definitely a priority, as well as baseball and softball fields at the middle schools, so that they're missing less instructional time and can actually be part of their own community. The second bucket that we spoke about was the development of a 3 to 5 year improvement plan for all current facilities: pool, the gymnasiums, the fitness centers, the stadium, and the grass fields. That priority is really about taking a look and saying that, how is it that we can develop a plan so that we're not stuck in a situation where a scoreboard doesn't work and then we need to fix it and replace it? What is that plan, and how are we looking at the pool and saying systematically, this is what the pools are going to need, this is how we can plan for it, this is how we can budget for it? The gyms, whether that's, and when we say gyms, that's in the middle schools as well. We need to take a look at our gymnasiums and say, okay, here's where they're at. What do these gyms need to be modernized, or to be updated, or to be rectified in a way that suits more individuals? How are we going to accomplish that over a 3 to 5 year plan? Fitness centers the same way, stadium, and grass fields. We added the grass fields just because it's hard for us. Like, our maintenance crew runs around fixing other properties that we are using, that we are spending transportation to send our kids to. This is not a cost-effective way to be operating as a system. Like, what is our maintenance plans from a grass field standpoint? And then the third one, and this is specifically related to the curriculum and to that student broadcasting end, and to our Pathways program, expanding the live streaming capabilities of our athletic venues, which is already on its way, because I know there's work happening this summer for up in the stadium, but this applies to our gymnasiums as well. And we know, I'm going to be like, when we had this committee, these recommendations are coming. Like, we took the filter off to truly have open conversations. We had to be able to take a look at this and say, hey, we have to answer these questions as though money is not an option, because that's how we're going to get to the real needs. Then it's our responsibility. So the ask that we have as co-chairs of this is really to cut us loose to be able to start working deeper into these 3 to 5 year improvement plans, so that we can appropriately budget things out, work with Mr. Dahlberg, start really building out our other revenue sources, such as how are we got the contracts that we're in, and how can we actually build our own revenue sources through promotions and move forward with that. So that, I guess that's the ask. We need to get to the bottom number, Mr. Wers, because I know you're going to say that. But what is this? Yeah, when you were talking about all right, with the middle school stuff, we're like, okay, we could have walked up and said, thank you, we did a lot of work, and walked out. We get that, but we have to start planning for it. And I think that's important. And I think that's why moving back to that vision statement and saying, hey, here is what our goal is. Here is how we're going to take our students there. Maybe the answer is no. Maybe it's going to take us longer than that. That's okay. But at least coming up with those plans to say, this is where we want to move forward.
Can I just share? Thank you guys very much, Mr. Ketty, Mr. Hunt. They've worked diligently on this, and the people involved in the committee have worked very hard at this. And it was a comprehensive look at what we're doing for athletics and activities.
Yes.
And there were voices from everyone. Things like electrical that came from the band, storage. Hey, they're carrying stuff all the way out there onto the field to practice. It's a long way out there. They don't have power. They got a generator out there. So some of those priorities that we're putting on here, they really are for everybody as part of that. So I really appreciate that we've kind of broken this down into the things that we need. Having additional lighted field space is, I think, going to be really important to help all of those programs. So I think this is some very good guidance. And I think it helped us to realize that there are some easy things that we need to do to make student participation greater and a better experience for everyone. Things related to just getting information out to the public, getting grandparents to be able to come out, live streaming. Some of these are easy things that we can handle to make systems better for our kids.
And something, and I want to thank you for those remarks, but the other thing I would be curious to see is the scholarship amounts that our student athletes are earning. You know, some of our students are going to some of the best universities, service academies, for their sports and their academic prowess. So when we talk about even students who don't earn scholarships, the fact that they are not, the du jour today is screen time. We hear about it a lot. So they are engaged, they're getting fresh air in their lungs, they're making friendships, relationships, and I think we have some excellent facilities here, but it's something to think about for the future as far as expanding and enhancing what we have to provide those opportunities for all our students. So I thank both of you for the presentation.
Appreciate it.
Do we have any questions from our board members?
So I kind of want to reiterate something that was, thank you for putting this together. I was part of some of these meetings, and I know, early on we were kind of scratching our heads. There were a couple of us, what is the ask, right? Like, you don't need to come before the board to ask about a mission statement. And it was, and I think Dr. Palmer, and I'll ask you to jump in because you can say your answer much better than I can reiterate what your answer was, in saying that we need to look at this kind of from the lens of what Dr. Bloom is looking at our academics, right? Everything is on a 5-year review plan, and we need to do the same for our athletic and activities that we offer in the district. And I think once that was said, it cleared up, at least for me and for some others in the group, to say, like, yeah, this is the start of that. And I think we need to work with ICS and say, as part of our capital budget and planning process, these are some of the priorities we see for the district, and let them start piecing this into some of their plans over the next couple of years.
I think that the 5-year plan is a great practice because it helps you really try to get the length. Like, I know Mr. Bramble does a really good job of making things, caring for things so that we can get the most out of them and try to extend them beyond. But if we don't have a plan, then all of a sudden you're running into situations where it becomes a multi-million-dollar project to fix a space that's going to look basically the same.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't want to be in a situation where we have a pool where we don't have timers, we can't use it for kids to get that, for that the scoreboard's not working. Like, we need to have those replacement things in place, be looking at these very carefully.
Yeah, this is an aquatics community with Menlo and water polo and everything else, and that investment in the school board is going to go a very long way with the people who have multiple generational, different levels of kids between elementary and high school and all that. Like, have that in place is going to go a long way.
We learned that our head of aquatics was here on the swim team before there was a pool, right? There was no pool. We learned a lot. Yeah.
So I do agree. I think our interests in our sports are outpacing our facilities. And I think sports are great for kids and only helpful in so many aspects. I am thinking, though, when we talked about equity, I liked about like thinking of equity in the sense of like sports getting like the same sort of spotlights and allowing, celebrating them all. We were just at the AP research presentation, and one of the students presented around something around like family income and how it correlates to athletic scholarships. And I mean, like I grew up here. I played sports every season, but there were a lot of sports that you didn't really try till you were in high school because there weren't like volleyball clubs. There weren't look feel. That is not the case now. There's clubs for everything, like you said, and I have a concern across all public schools that kids are getting priced out by the time they get to high school. Like it's really difficult unless if you have a family who can't afford to do the tournaments when you're young, can't afford the coaching, can't afford all the club teams. By the time you get to high school, and can drive yourself, like all those things that kind of hurt, that are more difficult for families that don't have a lot of flexibility. You're never, but you're rarely going to make the team. And so like, I feel like we're in an interesting paradigm with sports and public education, because like, it's almost like they move with clubs too. And I'm wondering, I have two questions around it. One, how can we make it easier for all kids, for all families, so that they aren't way behind by the time they get in a situation where they can do more themselves? And two, like, are there ways that public schools could partner with clubs now to kind of like share some of this? They're already
think it depends
moving in the same direction.
I think
Yeah.
it really depends on the sport. And from my perspective as being a community member and highly involved,
Yeah.
there's certain sports who are not finding way, like cheer, for instance, has like multiple organizations and people who are like go-getters. There's nobody that like cheerleaders like rule the world. They are the best communicators. You give them something to do, it's done in 3 minutes. It's like they're workers. But there's people who are like, I'm just going to work my own organization. And now there's like 3 or 4 different organizations. We're all trying to get to go to one, right?
Yeah.
Football is kind of in its own world. Track is in its own world because there's such large roster sports. But we fight with soccer, with the club and the MLS Next and everything. But I think the exposure at the middle school level and even just the promotion of it at the elementary level and getting these kids out to these games, specifically getting these kids into those schools, I think is huge for getting them interested in it. Because I know, like Green Jackets, if you don't have the money to play football, they'll find money for you to play football.
Yeah.
You know?
Yellow Jackets, Green Jackets, like there are well-embedded community organizations that, and Deep Run Valley, one of them, has homes. You don't see that as much as you did. Like when I grew up in summer. We went to SYO, that's where you play soccer, baseball, football, basketball. Here, the current climate isn't like that, and at least we have an organization like that that services all.
Yeah.
It's not super.
There's also a lot more branding for those organizations that are for profit, that like there's like coaches used to do it because they loved it, and then coaches are now they're getting paid to do it, and they love it. So they're out there promoting their brand, recruiting. Oh, you come play for me. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, I just like it concern, and I'm just, I can feel like I don't know what half my questions are when I start talking today. I'm sorry, but if like the clubs that we have here, even when there's like multiple ones kind of competing for each other, are
When you
part of the
say
reason
clubs,
why,
what are you referring to as
like
club?
like the deep run,
Okay.
like Green, all the and
Yeah, that's
by the time those kids get to high school, like it's probably the club kids who are going to be on the high school teams. Like there will be other kids. I'm not saying never, but it usually is a lot of the club kids because they've been playing it. And another kids play the same sport all year round now. Like everything's different from when I was a kid. And so these kids, like they're talented. They're really incredible athletes who deserve those spots. But they're also, it's creating this space where if you're a family that can't do that, you have a very low chance of your child being able to play on a high school team. And so there's the two aspects of it around like, sometimes that is a nice scholarship opportunity for them that they're now getting less of, but also just the physical activity aspect of it too. Like, are there even clubs we could do here that aren't the team, you know, but kids could still
Like the college
like
model,
pick up,
like
yeah,
college
pick up
model have.
base,
You have
yeah.
like you have like the Pennridge, or you have like the
Like
Penn
intramurals.
Penn State has their wrestling team,
like-
and then they have the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club where
Yeah.
there's kids in there. They can go there and do those things.
Yeah, like a kind of intramural thing where kids can be like, oh, we're just gonna pick up basketball in the gym every Thursday night. I like things like that to just give students an opportunity who want to play sports, but and I'm even thinking about my own kids. Like by the time my son was a freshman, there were, and we have a freshman baseball team. There were 50 kids trying out for it.
Baseball.
Like, yeah, like and
baseball rich town.
and he's like, well, and we like there he wasn't playing like that. Like they were the kids who made the team were incredible baseball players, but it's still just like, well, I guess you're done baseball now, you know, like it's sort of, yeah.
But I get what you're saying. To Leah's point, I mean, my son, he picked up basketball later, so he came in ninth grade, didn't make it. So then we're going everywhere, like we're looking everywhere for him to play. So if they had like an open gym, I don't even know how that would work, but to your point, I think you would bring more kids in. And I get it, there's the competition, I'm not saying there's the competition, he didn't make it, but it would be nice for those kids because basketball, you don't have many kids on the team, right? It's not been a basketball team, you don't have many. But if they were to have that ability to say, okay, I didn't make the team, but I could go to an open gym basketball at this time. Or then that could bring more of the community together and be like, okay, this is a great thing. I want to go out then and support more of my basketball team. I think that would be nice.
Zero driving.
Just so everyone knows, even if you're not on like the basketball team,
Yeah.
like, the PIAA rules, if you show up for basketball workouts, guess who gets invited to basketball workouts? You get to be there. So, because there's kids that are, there's going to be 40, 50 kids in the fall that are going to show up for basketball, and they're going to keep 30, maybe.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're having kids sit on the bench and like really not getting the opportunities because, you know, it's, I think enhancing an intramural aspect at the middle schools would really get the kids involved. I think the kids just want to play with their friends, honestly.
Yeah.
If you created those opportunities in the off season, I think.
We do, just so you know. I understand the examples.
Oh, great, great, yeah, okay.
That's you can run clubs during that club tournaments. Like, I know that like kids can do 3-on-3, tennis, anything. You offer the hacky sack. You have hacky sack club now.
Oh, I never heard that's coming back. Okay.
I'd like to jump in real quick. First, I want to say thank you very much. There's a lot of work that went into that. And I'm glad you didn't just get up and leave when we were talking about the middle school, because I'm looking at some of these line items here, and Tom and I, we're working with Senator Coleman, looking at additional funding that's outside of district. And there's like the electrical access, the lights, there's some IT, possibilities. Now that we have a list of asks, now I know what to start looking at and focusing on. And I'm not saying yes by any stretch of the imagination, because there's a lot of work that goes into it to attain the funding from a grant. But now we know what we're looking for. There's opportunity there. So thank you, gentlemen.
That was my last note too. Are there any wealthy benefactors who want to donate like a stadium and have their name on it around here? Like, but that is something that like happened in other schools though. Yeah.
It's not. Put a policy in place that people can name things, and then you have a strict.
Sure. Hunt Stadium, I'm ready.
Yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
but others like public schools could do that, and I feel like something like this is because the biggest spend is like the build. You know, like
we were at, I think you and I were at a meeting.
Yeah.
And there was another school board, school admin that made a comment to that of, if this district went without, they would have a parent that would step up and fund the entire thing. So, if there's anyone that
There's something to be said for that in raising money. I know I spoke to a teacher about this a while ago. And teacher would love to get involved with that and try to create some funding opportunities outside of, for a stadium, getting donors and things like that. There's an opportunity to offset a lot of the costs of that, or some of it.
Yeah, well,
get your name on it too.
our baseball team went and played multiple private school prep schools in like scrimmages and playoffs this year, and they have those fields because somebody bought them on. So like,
Well, not
get
one,
it.
but, you know,
Yeah.
a lot
I-
of community members might, because they have a lot of history here,
Yeah.
put some money into something.
I have.
Right.
Well, we definitely do have people that want to get involved with having names on buildings and getting involved in sponsorship. I think we need to really dive into how we create contracts with that and
Oh, yeah.
a process, because I think when we have it, I think people will jump at the opportunity. But right now we can do.
So we'd have to change a policy to allow it? Is that what you?
I think we have contracts from previous administrations and whatnot that we have to look at, because I think those are what are.
But I think with any type of naming,
Yeah.
we would want a policy. Just for example, if someone donated large sum of money and they went out and broke the law and did something, I'm not going to name any characters, but let's say a Jeffrey Epstein type donated a large sum of money, and then we find out that they have a relationship, then it would give us an opportunity to not be held to a certain name.
Okay. Got it. I wasn't thinking of that, but I should.
But we had Grandview as the name for a while, right? So like those types of organizations, I think would be all for it. I think even some others too.
Yeah.
But we just have to be creative in who we let in and how we let them in and how long and how much.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So when-
Yeah.
And we do have one public comment. Mr. Rush, thank you for waiting.
Good evening, everyone. Lee Rush, Percy. True story, I went to Pennridge High School, went to Pennridge South, was a junior high school. I credit my coach in South of really turning my life around. And I used to be a high jumper, so maybe I could donate some money when I die and leave money for a memorial high jump pit.
There you go.
One of the
Die.
I mean,
We'll put you down.
I don't try to judge any brainstorm. Seriously, I talked about this years ago. There was and still is technically a foundation here, I think, still in structural IRS, Education Foundation. And years ago, I was at a school in Cincinnati. It was an old school, as old as South, probably older. But so many people graduated from that high school, Walnut High School, something in Cincinnati. They loved their school and they preserved it, and they started raising money from alumni. Now, that was a big city district. Many of the people went to other scholarships on colleges. They made some decent money, and they really raised millions of dollars to protect that legacy of that school, do something with private donations. So seriously, it's something to think about. Legacy gifts. I mean, I still have it in my will to leave some money with the Pennridge Education Foundation. So I'm hoping it gets resurrected, because I think I'm one of thousands of alumni that would be more than happy to leave a small or modest gift behind. People leave it to hospitals, they leave it to churches and colleges, but I think that, public education deserves a shot at that too. All right, my comments tonight. I'll come back another night and talk about pays. Spent a lot of time of my life working with surveys. Just a few comments. I agree with Brian, especially to keep in perspective that the data you have from 21 was through the lens of living through that pandemic for a year. So one thing you'll see definitely drop off is the rates of depression and disconnection into the year 2025. In the survey for the state, there's no Pittsburgh, there's no Philadelphia city schools in that data. So that's also something to keep in mind. I really wanted to come tonight and just tell you a little bit about the status of these phone bills in Harrisburg. Yesterday, I was the guest of Representative Labs and Stats in Harrisburg, won the House floor. It was quite an honor and quite an experience to watch that vote go down. It passed the House, it being House Bill 1814. Now, the thing that happened is, for some reason, the Democrats inserted language into the bill that includes all private schools and non-public schools. interesting insertion passed with that provision in the bill. It has to go back to the Senate now because the Senate version that was passed did not have that included. So they still have to do some reconciliation. A betting person would say that the Senate will strip that out of the bill. There's no way that mostly Republicans will approve regulation of any private or non-public school like that. So I'll keep in mind to send an email to keep you more updated, but I really encourage the board to get on your policy committee, policy 237, I think it is. I think that's the electronic device policy. Get it on your list and let's get ahead of it for the next year because it most likely will pass in Pennsylvania. It will be another vote probably this summer. And the one thing I know I'm over time, I'll make it really quick. Last week in Bucks County, I'm involved with the Pennsylvania Unplugged group with parents across the Commonwealth. We started a group in Bucks County called Bucks Unplugged, and there's a lot of beginning here called Pennridge Unplugged. Parents that want to help create standards and expectations on appropriate technology use in schools. The Bucks County Commissioners approved $2,000 stipends to every school district in Bucks County and 3 technical schools. All you had to do is write a letter and ask them for the money. And I'm proposing that you do that as quickly as you can and that the money is used to strengthen what they wrote here is hopefully this is from the commissioner's language. They wrote a letter to every school. We hope the funds can be used to implement a policy, strengthen your existing policy, or to educate parents and students about changes that are about to happen. So I'd like to suggest that we do that work with the parent group and do it in collaboration with that parent group. Small amount of money, but I think they wanted to just get into the groove of trying to help the conversations continue. Thank you. Sorry I went over time.
Thank you. So that wraps up Student Services Committee meeting. The next one is scheduled for Wednesday, August 19th. We'll roll right into policy. Policy is here, so I'll be going over policy for her. I don't believe we have any public comment. So we will move right along to the policy update plan with Mr. Johnson.
Definitely. Yeah. Zipped up and leaving.
So policy update plan is the same as the last committee meeting. I do think Dr. Barrios, June 3rd of 2025, I believe, submitted information about a naming rights policy just for consideration. I think we will add that to policy update plan. We also have to look at PSBA and recent updates that were recommended by PSBA. So at some point, Ms. Taylor and I will get together and address some policy updated. But I think which one,
The naming?
the naming, well, we don't have one right now.
Oh, okay,
so-
but you said, okay.
But that's something we should definitely consider, especially based on the conversation from this evening. I'm going to move past the policy update plan and I'm going to focus on this second reading of 815.2. There are 3 areas that we need to review regarding this policy, and it's focused on students. So I'm going to draw the board's attention to page 5. So if we look at under delegation of responsibility, student and parent responsibilities, there was an add, if you review bullet number 3, regarding no confidential or proprietary district information. I'd ask that the board review that. I do believe that is something that we should add to this particular policy. Again, it was a recommendation from the first reading to the second reading. So without, if we want to discuss that.
Because the thing is, if they do add it, then it's owned by Microsoft, right? Out there,
It's accessible to anyone.
right? Yeah, I think that's what we talked about. So we want to make sure that we're letting our students know and our staff know not to put any of that stuff. Yeah.
I want to draw your next attention to page 7, and this is under district provided generative AI tools.
I'm sorry, can we just go back to that one? Like, how would a student know what is
Personally identifiable.
like proprietary district information? Like, is it really just confidential information we're talking about? Like, not something like the football schedule? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and again, this was, if you remember, Elizabeth shared information with the board. That was her recommendation from a legal standpoint to keep us, yes.
Educate the students on what it is. It's to be discussed with the students, right? They need to know this is the type of information you cannot put.
Right.
Right.
But an example of district information would be anything on letterhead. Just throwing it out there as an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes out of education.
I guess would that be something that's obviously then in the AR to be more identified, more reined in, like
Yes.
Brian just said, okay. Thank you. And then that obviously will then be, our students will be educated on that. Thank you.
Yes. I'm going to go to page 7. So if you look at the top sentence in green, another add-on, all district-provided generative AI tools will be installed. District-provided IT devices and/or platforms.
Did IT approve that?
Yes, he helped in writing that.
Perfect.
And then the final consideration for the board is this last, created a lot of conversation in our last meeting. We're debating student versus district, and that's that last sheet there. Raw output generated by the district. I think recommendation from the solicitor was that we make it, and again, it was in concert with the IT director, that we make it district owned as opposed to student owned. And again, I think that was the bulk of our conversation at the last meeting. And the request was to share it with the solicitor and try to receive a recommendation from her. Any objection to the district versus the student?
It looks good.
That is all I have regarding this policy and changes and updates. Is there anything else from the board that was that you wanted to review based on the first reading? Yeah. Now, we'll move on to the staff use of generative AI. I put this in the 300s because that's where all the staff policies are located. So now this is wide open, purely because this is, again, a new policy for the district. A little bit more condensed than the student use policy, but nonetheless still a lot of information and content compared to what was recommended by PSBA. I'm going to leave the floor open if there are any concerns, again, because all the language within this policy is new. Some of it mirrors what was written in the use of generative AI for students. But again, a little bit more condensed and shortened. And there will be an AR associated with this policy as well.
In the AR, it will be things like if they're grading papers, they grade them, not to be submitted.
We want to clarify regardless of which type of laptop they're on, whether it's a district issued laptop or their own personal. For that second paragraph.
Okay, yep. I think what we can do for that is bring that to the attention of the solicitor and feedback, and then
Right.
do exactly the same exercise we did for the
Because
other.
if it's on a district issued device, then it's going to use the appropriate AI tool.
Yes.
If it's on their own, if you don't make that distinction,
Open season.
it's open season. Yeah.
Those policies that it references are similar to, although less, compared to the use of generative AI for the students. Definitions are the same.
Your point, Brian, just so I get clarity.
Yes.
So it says like, the generative AI is put into laptop, so they can use it if it's that same one that the district uses on their own laptop.
It will not be the same. It's the same tool, but it doesn't have the same provisions on the back end of it. Whereas if we use a district issued device, it's only going to the Pennridge subscription to Microsoft for Copilot. If you do it on your own personal laptop, that's not connected to the district in any way, it's out.
Now, do our teachers, do they have to use school laptops? What is that like when they're doing, I guess, grading? Are they only allowed to use school district laptops, or are they able to use their personal laptop?
Sure, they could. So if I'm at home and let's say I left my district issued laptop in my classroom, I have my own computer, then I'll go in and I can enter grades, add assignments. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a district issued device for them to use for school related matters for their courses.
Okay, so it does.
So it's a good distinction
Yes,
to
you
make,
have to make a distinction.
only when using the generative AI tool.
Yes.
If you're just adding something to a
Grading or
schedule, you
something
can
like
log
that,
into
that-
a PSD key or
Sure.
Canvas. Doesn't much matter.
And I think that's a great distinction because that's the focus of this particular policy, strictly related to AI.
I lost my place. Thanks.
I'm going to point to delegation of responsibility just so you can review that. There's a district responsibility, so you can review that language. And then an important section here about teacher responsibilities, similar to in the other policy 815.2, where it focused on parent and student responsibilities. There's this section about teacher responsibilities and then staff, which separates out teachers versus other staff within the district.
It's supposed to help, right? Not supposed to do the job for you. So what are the checks and balances of us knowing, is it just the honor system? And we're knowing that the teachers are just using it as a helping tool? Or how is that? Is that monitored? Like, how is that checked?
Meaning are teachers monitored in terms of how they use AI?
If they're doing their, yes, and if they're, it's supposed to be a helping tool, not to just do everything. So how is there somehow like checks and balances of saying how it's being used, how
Yeah.
they're using it?
And I think that's something that we really, the AR may boil that down and the
Okay.
policy's a little
Here,
bit
but I'm
more
just-
general.
I'm not saying here, but is that something that?
In general.
That in the AR?
I'm going to ask Mr. Merkel Gump, the teacher, to talk about what that looks like for you.
the use of AI. I don't. You're asking the wrong guy.
That's great. I love it.
I certainly would never use it for grading. There's a lot of problems there in terms of the amount of information.
Yeah. You did just as much work to troubleshoot the grade.
Correct. Correct.
It would be to
You'd have to
grade it.
re-review everything it did anyway.
Yeah.
I do know of coworkers that will use it to help them develop emails to send to parents, things like that. It's just a form letter or something like that. They'll use it in that case. But it's not currently overly used by most teachers.
It's still too new. The younger teachers coming out in the next 5 to 7 years are going to be relying pretty heavily on it, I think. So
Mostly.
we're getting out ahead of it.
So what would we say you've taken it too far? What would be an example?
How would you know if they're, I guess that's my
That's-
thing.
yeah,
How do
how do you
we
police it?
know?
Yeah, and we may not know. I mean, we're not the AI police. This is really a guardrail to help us and to give teachers information about what their professional responsibilities are. If they circumvent the system, it would really be hard or challenging for us to know when you have several hundred teachers in the district. It would almost be like someone would have to point something out or share a concern with the administration, whether that be a principal, assistant superintendent, myself. For example, I'm thinking about IEP writing and someone who writes an IEP, and it just, that's why there's some supervision in terms of special ed supervisors that review IEPs. There's IEP meetings, and if something doesn't, that seems off, maybe the data doesn't make sense based off what they wrote, that would draw the attention of a supervisor, principal, colleague, and then that would come to our attention. I think that's where we really look at how the
Sorry.
just threw me off.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's fine. How the administrative regulation is written.
As far as confirming those guide rails you were speaking of, that is something you should ask Microsoft about, because they may be able to say there's certain like number or letter formats, like a social security number. It's a defined number of characters separated by dashes, so you would be able to put something like that in. So if you, like in your instance, if you had an IEP, maybe you say we don't want any common first names used in the IEP. You just want to run through it. It'll just say student and then a number, so it's unidentifiable. In that fact, it would be okay. But you could have it depending on based on the type of document you're running through it. Ask them what guide rails they have available to report back to you to say, this person tried doing this.
Right.
Here's a copy of what they've submitted. This is what we gave them. And there could be like a warning saying, hey, are you sure you want to submit this? We've recognized a social security number, a first name, a last name, an address, a phone number, that kind of thing.
And the one thing we don't want to do, we don't want a policy to create fear.
Correct.
Or concern from teachers whom we should trust unless there's evidence to the contrary that we should be concerned. So when I think about policies of this nature, it's really about putting parameters in place to help teachers understand where the lines are drawn, as opposed to creating a scenario where they're going to be, somebody going to be checked. No, we're not checking you, but this is to help you understand how you can appropriately use AI, and then we develop an administrative regulation that supports what's written in the policy.
Count the number of M dashes used in lesson plan. That was what I said over here. I'm not distracted.
Word does automatically change those to M dashes. It's
Sure did,
appropriate,
right,
though.
yeah. Just got to put that command in there.
Exactly.
I mean, I just feel like as long as they can use it to save them time, I have no problem. And they're checking it. I wouldn't be horrible, other than being careful with confidentiality. Even honestly, even with an IEP, if you want to throw some ideas out there, but you have to check it. But it's similar to even, like you go to the doctor's and voice to text, and then they can now have AI be like, right, clean it up. Like get the there's all my information in the file, fill it in. It saves time. There's a limit of time, but I think
Smarter, not harder, right?
yeah, it's smarter. I mean, I use a lot of e code that does this. Boom. It's tons of time saves me. So,
And we just have to be careful, teachers in particular, not just regarding IEPs, GIPs, 504 service agreements. There's so many different things. You have to be careful what information you input into it because now it's out there about students and or colleagues and or what you're, so there's just a delicate balance. And again, that's what this policy is intended to do, to help them understand what that delicate balance is, and then, follow that with a regulation that's very specific.
So something is out there, let's just say. That happened.
If it's the unapproved version of the tool, it's just there.
I'm saying like if an IEP, like let's say they put in social security, right?
You're somewhat more protected because it's a subscription-based account for the district. That's why we went with changing the student to district for the owner.
I don't believe we have social security numbers and IEPs.
I was
Oh,
using
no.
it as an example
We would use a
of an
student.
easily identifiable number.
Oh, like the number that we do here. Oh.
Yeah.
Putting a student's name out there is.
It's the correlation of data. Now you have a name and an address and a phone number, so that would be out there and they could tie that together. But I was using social security number as an example of an easily identifiable format for a number. Like in the medical field, that's something that it gets caught all the time. You can't even email, some of the companies I've been in, you can't even email a document to another internal recipient, anything that has their social security number in it. It just, the email dies right there and you get a warning saying was undeliverable, it didn't make it. So now you have to go fax it to them because that's considered secure, whereas email is not. It's just
fax.
And I'm
Well, it's
not
secure.
interested, yeah,
It's
in
point
dragging the
blank.
meeting out longer, but I will
Yeah.
say that like, there's a lot of data out there on our students already in our systems. I mean, we talk about regularly how nice it is to be able to go through some of the data and be able to pinpoint where we can help these students more effectively. AI can do that too. Like even if you're a teacher in a classroom, like where am I losing this kid? Like and like go through their test scores. And what do you see? And they're like they're always missing this one piece.
It's more a question of where that data is stored. That's the question.
exactly.
If it's already out there now in the network, it's still isolated in the network. It's not publicly accessible. Whereas now that you've used it in an AI tool, it's no longer on premise. It's out there.
And the confidentiality
Yes.
becomes an important issue. When we're looking at data here, you're looking at aggregated data across the district. We're not drilling down on any individual student. That individual student's data, that is a confidential protected piece that should
Oh, that's good to know.
shared under specific circumstances. It can be shared with the student, it can be shared with their family, it can be shared with other people who need to know. I can't share it with another student. Like I'm not allowed to share a student's grade with another
Oh
student.
yeah.
Could you send it to another teacher?
I could send it to another teacher because that teacher is needed to know.
Right.
And the final area I just want you to get eyes on relates to consequences. So I'd like the members to review the language associated with that. I think it's very well written. I think the amount of time that was taken and the amount of collaboration with the attorney to kind of see what we really envisioned for a policy. And what we asked for is something a lot more robust than what PSBA offered to us and offered to districts across the Commonwealth. So I think it meets those expectations that we had. So I think we have two very well-written policies that can feed into administrative regulations. So I'm very, very pleased with the work that was done. And I want to thank Mr. McMullen publicly because a lot of what we discussed, it just went beyond me because I don't use AI. I don't understand it. And I think I mentioned at the last meeting, he sent me something. I didn't really want to open it because it was an AI.
AI's using you.
Right. So I don't like to be.
Wow.
Right.
Are you smarter than AI?
Well, I think so. Thank you, Dr. Barrios. Any other comments or?
Guy right
No,
now.
thank you. Thank you,
Ernest.
Brian. Even with my- Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think this is a tough topic.
Mhm.
Because to me, it's almost infinite.
It's almost gonna be a living
AI.
policy. It's gonna
Yeah.
change as
Yes.
the technology
Yeah.
evolves. So
Yeah.
for where we're at right now with what the use case is, I think it's spot on.
Exactly.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
well done.
So I don't believe we have any more public comments. That wraps up our policy committee. Our next policy committee meeting is scheduled for August 19th. Have a good night.
Perfect.